Get peppy! Welcome to PEP 235. That's Planet Extra Podcast. I am Chaz Ciadello, a host of Planet America and ABC Australia, and this is an official podcast of the ABC. Say hi to the Ombudsman for me. On PEP, we cover all the stuff that's too nerdy for TV. If you listen, you can find us on YouTube at the PEP with Chaz and Dr. Dave channel, and you can find highlights there as well. And we're on Facebook at the Chaz from Planet America channel. You'll also find timestamps and show notes in our blurbs, and if you leave a comment under our current episode video, we are likely to see it. You can also tweet us or blue sky us at PEPcasterDAVE. That's at PEPChaz Dr. Dave. If you want to chat to some fellow peppers, you can join our Discord server. It's on the screen now or in the blurb of the podcast. But if you want to contact me or Lockie the Lucky privately, why not email us? The address is producer@pepthepodcast.com. The address again is producer@pepthepodcast.com. And don't forget to subscribe for all that peppy goodness. It all helps. We're recording this at 9:30 p.m. on a Monday of all times. Or at, I think it says 6:30 a.m. on a Monday in New York. This was quite delayed, but we got there in the end. But for now, let's turn to the man who will never raise the stakes in inconsequential views. I speak, of course, of the Mondschein with the mostest. It's Jared Mondschein.
Thank you so much, Chaz. My name is Jared Mondschein. I'm the Director of Research at the U.S. Studies Center at the University of Sydney. And I should clarify that similar to our favorite Dr. Dave, I do not speak for either of those esteemed institutions, regardless of how much the email and X and every other foreign media hate I've gotten over the last week may think I do. It's just myself and myself only.
You don't speak to Dr. Dave today?
I did not speak to him today.
No, I speak for him, sorry?
No, I don't speak for him or anyone else. I'm so glad I'm the only one getting all the hate mail, no one else.
So you're at liberty to tell us why you're getting all this hate mail?
Yes. So we actually had one of our biggest weeks ever in terms of just news coverage alone last week. So firstly, on Monday, we'll cover this shortly, but there was the President Trump going to Israel and speaking at the Knesset and then going to Egypt. And I was with your colleague, the lovely Joe O'Brien, on Monday for 3.5 hours on the desk with him. And I was just telling Lockie, I really appreciate your chairs here a lot more than ABC TV's chairs. And then there's some further news coverage about that. And then I release some polling. The polling that I first gave PEP the exclusive to, then I actually released it for real on Wednesday and Thursday. And
you got abuse for your polling?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
So much abuse. Yeah.
Amazing.
You'd think it would be hard to abuse someone for just, reporting what Australia says about stuff. I'm just asking questions here. Yeah. But I think my favorite nickname, I do have to say, I guess we're skipping straight to the Gratefuls.
Yeah, let's do it.
That's all right.
Yeah.
The nicknames I've gotten in Australia have been fantastic. Yeah. And also what I've learned. There's a few things I've learned. But first, I want to share my favorite nickname. And that is, I'm to this day, in some of my friends' phones, I'm still known as this. And that is when I went on Sky News. I got this a few years ago. I went on Sky News to talk about U.S.-China stuff. And somehow still someone just called me Soy Zionist Skeletor. Like, okay, the last name, I can see maybe the Zionist, but the soy and the Skeletor, it's like, I'm skinny, but is it soy is effeminate, and that's why?
I'm not saying Skeletor, I've got to say. I mean, look, you've got a He-Man style chin.
Oh, wow.
Like you have sort of, like a rectangular chin, like all those He-Man figures do have that chin, but you could just as easily be He-Man as Skeletor.
That's so kind of you. Wow. So is Zionist He-Man?
You could be Battle Cat.
Yeah. Okay.
Any character on He-Man.
The other thing, but what I'm really grateful for this year is the first time ever I got hate mail with Seppo.
Ah, yes. Seppo,
you're familiar with this?
Yeah, Septic Tank Yank. It's rhyming slang.
There you go. No one under the age of 40 knows this whatsoever. Have you ever heard this? Nope.
Evidently, no.
Yeah, no one in my whole office except everyone over 40 who's Australian knew this nickname. So it was nice not to get hatred for my last name. It was only for being American, and I appreciate that. I even got featured on 4chan, just the lovely website there. Yeah.
Because of your stats?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. No. It was like the biggest media impact ever, just because we happened to release polling a few days before Prime Minister Albanese went to the United States.
So someone was calling you Seppo because of your stats as well?
Because I had the audacity to report that only 16% of Australians thought that a second term of Donald Trump was good for Australia.
Okay.
Not cooking the books here. Just what YouGov reported back to us when we gave them some questions to ask Australians.
If you're wondering about the Seppo thing, if any peppers are wondering about that, because you're right, it's not a common phrase in Australia these days. I think the Venn diagram of people who use the phrase Seppo and people who use the word struth in common language would be a circle. I think that's basically that's the kind of person we're talking about.
I should also say, I'm so grateful that the PEP audience is so much kinder when I meet them and I get mail from them than the normal Australian audience that has to suffer through my media appearances.
Do you want the PEP audience to give you a nickname?
I would love a nickname.
Okay,
yeah.
There you go.
I've never had a nickname my whole life that has ever stuck with me.
There you go, Peppers. Have at it.
I'm going to regret that.
Well, I'm grateful for... Look, I haven't written this one out, but I've got a pretty good idea in my head. I was a little concerned going into the No Kings protest. I am going to discuss this obliquely later on in a different context, but I was nervous going into it. And the reason why was because normally when you have a massive kind of protest coming against an organisation or a government or whatever, they try to ignore it. Yeah. They prefer to make it disappear if they can, if it's been critical of them. But the Trump administration were going out of their way to embrace the No Kings protest on its way in, because they were hoping that when you have that many people, it was clearly going to be big. And when you have that many people, some of them are going to be violent.
Yeah. And
they were clearly setting up that there was going to be something violent that they could head to the fainting couches over. Right. Fox News was definitely teeing that up.
Yeah.
And it was pretty clear to everyone what was coming, I feel. Well, that we're hoping was coming. And I'm a strong believer that the best way to know how you've done is to listen to your critics. And when I say listen to your critics, I don't mean, if your critics say you've done well, then you've done well. I don't mean that at all. What I mean is listen to the criticisms that they think they can get away with. If someone has it in for you and they're trying to take you down any way they can, and you know what they want to say about you and they're not saying it, it means you absolutely did not do that thing. Because if they could, they would. And if they come up with something lame instead, then you know they went through the Rolodex trying to think of every particular criticism they could come up with, and all they come up with is this piece of shit. And you go, okay, well, we've done okay. And this was a perfect example where the No Kings protest was being teed up for failure by the administration and by the administration's allies. And 5 to 8 million people were so well behaved. I didn't see a single story about violence.
No, it just vanished from Fox News altogether.
What I saw number one, the absence, and number two, I saw tweets about people going, no one turned up, and they'd show like a half-empty New York or something, and you just go, well, I know you took this. I know this photo is not from when it was full up. It's pretty obvious what's going on here. And you know what? Even if you found some bowling green in Cleveland or something where there weren't many people, when you have 2,500 locations, it adds up. Even if there's only 2,000 or 3,000 people on average on each location, that still adds up to 6 or 7 million if you do the maths.
Yeah.
So lots of locations are going to be kind of empty, and that's cool. That's actually the strength of this kind of protest. That it's not about a lot of people in one location. It's people everywhere, including in the locations where it's not city slickers and it's not a whole bunch of blue staters, and it's bowling greens. Yeah. It's everywhere. Yeah. So that's the first thing I saw. I saw attempts to try and suggest it didn't go very well.
Right.
And the second thing I saw is people going, how lame is this? It is a bunch of 70-year-olds who, they themselves, by the way, were often making fun of themselves from this. I saw a photo of Grand Tifa, who were people walking around with signs calling themselves Grand Tifa, these 7-year-olds and 8-year-olds, and you go, that's good. This is good. That's the right spirit. Have some fun.
Yeah.
You have to be angry and serious all the time. You can actually have fun while you're protesting. And yeah, Mike Lee was out there. This tweet here, have a look at this.
He's Utah Senator?
Utah Senator Mike Lee, Republican senator, who's who going into the protest, he was one of the people who was hyping up how bad it was going to be, how it was Antifa and Soros and all this kind of stuff.
Communists, Hamas supporters,
Marxists, and whereas coming out of it, he's tweeting these daggy people doing line dancing, like doing like the Buttigieg. Remember the Buttigieg dancing in 2020, when they were dancing to High Hopes in a really daggy way. It's like that kind of dancing. And he's tweeting out, nothing says hip like rhythmless boomers trying to dance, all while trying way too hard to look like they're having fun. If that's your criticism, they've done pretty well.
Yeah.
So congratulations. And I'm grateful that they walked the tightrope with 5 to 8 million people and didn't fall off. You start off, Jared, by talking to us about all the hatred you've received since you spent a few hours on ABC talking about Gaza. So I think the best thing we should do is start off by talking about Gaza. Because you need more hatred. Now, we've already told people that we want a new nickname for you, so don't... don't retire that Zionist Skeletor stuff. Like gold.
Soy Zionist Skeletor.
I gotta say, guys, Peppers, be good to us. I hate talking about Israel and Gaza because you can't win. Whatever you say, people are going to hate on you. Whatever. Like, it's impossible. It is impossible. I'm not an expert.
Yeah.
I'm doing this because it was the main story for a few weeks, and I don't want to be a coward and avoid it.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert. If you want expertise on this topic, this is not the place you come. I'm just doing my job of trying to cover American politics the best I can and try and add something. I imagine you probably feel the same way. Is that right?
Yeah, 100%. Okay. But I should say, though, that I think there's a really easy way to not get any criticism on this. Do you know what it is?
Well, you can just say nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah, but this one I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try and approach this like I'm going to try and not be a coward. I'm going to try approach this like I would any other topic and just say what I think. Jared.
Okay. Headlines is that the remaining hostages that Hamas is holding in Gaza, they were all basically military-aged men, were handed over to Israel.
This is the 20 of them, yeah?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
There were 20 hostages handed over to Israel in sort of batches in one day. At the same time, there are nearly 2,000 Palestinians detained by Israel that were released mainly to Gaza.
Yeah.
And Israel agreed to withdraw basically to what they call the Yellow Line to basically enact a ceasefire.
And just to be clear, with the people released back to Gaza, there's 250 were prisoners. And when we say prisoners, like we're talking like real prisoners. There's like murderers there. Yeah. There's like terrorists there. There's real prisoners convicted of bad things, right? Yeah. But then there's like 1,700 odd detainees. Now those detainees could be anything. They could have done nothing. Yeah. They could just be like Israel does have a double standard when it comes to the justice system. And there are people who are there are Palestinians who get taken up and detained just for suspicion. And just because they're in the wrong place at the wrong time, they don't have to have done anything. So some of those detainees might have done something really bad. Yep. But some of them might just literally be wrong place at wrong time. Mm-hmm. And so they're a real mixed bag. And certainly I know that a certain number of Palestinians feel that part of the reason those detainees exist is to provide fodder for trade-offs. Yep. Like to go, here's another 2,000 for you. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But that is the knock.
And that is what has happened before. This is not the first time that Palestinians detained in Israeli custody have been exchanged for hostages. Famously, there was a Israeli soldier who was kidnapped by a cross-border raid by some Palestinians, and he was held for some time and hidden in Hamas. He was exchanged for a number of Palestinians, and including in those Palestinians was the mastermind of the October 7 attacks in 2023.
That's 2011, I think. That's I forgot the guy's name. Was it started G?
Khalid.
Yeah. That's it.
This is not the first time, and so you're right. There is an argument that they are deliberately overzealous in detaining Palestinians.
I was going to ask you a question. Can I ask you a question?
Please.
Generally? I don't know if I'm interrupting your flow here, but I think we should actually go back a little bit further and just answer the question, because it's probably one of the big questions asked in the last few weeks. Why did the peace happen now?
Oh yeah, I'm getting to that.
Okay, sorry. Okay. Well, you keep on going, then you can get to it.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
So there's historical precedence for all of this. At the same time, where we stand right now is that there are a number of Israelis, their bodies, hostages, they're dead, but there's apparently buried in Gaza, and they have not been returned to Israel. And there's fights over this. There's supposed to be about 28 altogether.
So how many have been released at this point in time?
I think less. I think 20 are perhaps still outstanding. I believe.
I think. Look, I might be wrong on this. The number I have in my head is that 9 have been released. So 19 left over.
I thought it was maybe 8. Yeah. But still, there's a lot of dispute. And at the same time, I'm just trying to give the lay of the land where they stand right now. Israel feels that Hamas has broken the ceasefire. Hamas and others in Gaza think that Israel has broken the ceasefire.
Yep.
And there were some attacks on Israeli troops. 2 Israeli troops died. Israel attacked in retaliation, perhaps, or perhaps without retaliation. It was unprompted. It's still very unclear at this point, and a number of Palestinians have died as well. And so, with that said, I'm saying it's fog of war still in some ways, and we don't know everything. But right now, the ceasefire is holding. Yeah, and that is, I think, the number one thing right now is. There's a lot of news in the past week about optimism for peace and a completely changed Middle East. And I think the one thing we have certainty for is that right now the ceasefire is still holding. Yes. Now, so why did we get here? Yeah. That is a great question. I think one thing I do, I like to look at a lot is public opinion. Yep. Obviously, not just when I'm disappointing MAGA-loving Australians. I do like to actually look at where public opinion stands. And a similar, like 80% of Gazans and Israelis wanted hostilities to end. So first you have to look at the people. Yeah. Right? But then you have to look at the ingredients for what led to this ceasefire. And I think the first you have to look at is President Trump. Yep. Let's not forget what President Trump did during his first term of office. He moved the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Yep. He recognized Israeli control over the Golan Heights. He killed Soleimani, a leading Iranian military commander. Yep. He rhetorically really supported Israel quite a bit. In many ways, he could not have supported more. Now, what has he done in his second term? He attacked Iran when Netanyahu has wanted Iran to be attacked for some time. He basically said that despite having taken office with a ceasefire in January, he basically didn't really care a lot in the beginning, and said that Israel may even be able to work with the Trump administration to make a Gaza Largo, is that what we called it? Riviera? I've lost track of
Gaza Largo, yeah, sure.
And he gave hope to some far right aspects of the Israeli government and society, thinking that perhaps basically just making a parking lot, right? And he, in many ways, has at least rhetorically, given Israel more than any U.S. president in recent history.
No doubt.
At the same time, I think one thing I will say is what people maybe don't appreciate is that I'm not sure, unlike tariffs, I'm not sure Trump particularly cares all that much about Israel. I think we shouldn't forget, before he was elected, I think it was April 2024, he gave an interview to an Israeli outlet where he said, Israel needs to stop. Israel it's losing international support for this. Israel needs to end this. I think he's more pragmatic and less ideological than people may appreciate, and that includes a pragmatism in terms of saying, I don't really care if you kill a bunch of people. That same pragmatism famously has led him to reportedly tell Xi Jinping he didn't care if he took Hong Kong or what he did in Tibet or he did in Xinjiang or potentially even Taiwan. So then, all right, we know that Trump has really gotten a lot of support from and given a lot to Bibi. So he has earned that.
Yes.
At the same time, you have to look at public opinion on Israel in the United States. And that is only declining. Not only amongst Democrats, where it's declined pretty significantly in the last 10 years, but even amongst Republicans, it was declining, right? And we all know quite well the sort of gulf in the conservative movement, led by, on one hand, you have, you could just say, I don't know if the most well-known, but the noisiest, Laura Loomer. Yes. And then on the other side, you have Tucker Carlson.
Yeah.
Right? And so the MAGA movement is by no means unified on Israel.
And just the fact that Republicans lost from memory, about 10-15% support for Israel over the last few years is significant in itself, because there is so much pressure in America to polarize, to politically polarize. So at the time the Democrats are moving against Israel, there is every incentive for a centrifugal effect to spin the Republicans out towards Israel. So the fact they actually moved away from Israel by 10 or 15 points against that polarizing centrifuge suggests that in the absence of polarization, Republicans would have moved so much more. Like, that is a terrible sign for Israel, that they lost support amongst Republicans at the same time as losing support amongst Democrats.
Yeah, you're completely right. The political pressure would lead you to think it'd be the opposite. Now, that's just teeing up what has happened, right? There's a really well-known concept in diplomacy that only Richard Nixon could go to China because he was so fiercely anti-communist. He was the only one who could meet with a communist China and open up to China, because if any Democrat or any left-winger tried to do it, then the Republicans would say, of course you're going to meet with China. You're so weak-willed and anti-American, blah, 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 blah. Now, I think there is an argument that can be made here that only Trump could actually go and get Netanyahu to the table on this. Yes, there was domestic pressure on Netanyahu. At the same time, let's not forget that Netanyahu has considerable domestic pressure.
Yes.
He is not particularly popular in Israel. He is prime minister because the opposition parties have not been able to get enough support. It's not because a majority of Israelis support him.
They got this not terrible, but they got this complicated alliance system, and they just couldn't. His opponents couldn't get a majority together, essentially, of a coalition.
And so I think only only Trump could, one, get Netanyahu to the table to force him to a peace agreement, because basically he could say, look, I cannot be a bigger backer, and if you don't want peace with me, you're not going to get peace with anyone. But two, I think this is what's unique to Trump, is that he's the only one that could even have his people meet with Hamas. Can you imagine the Biden administration meeting directly with Hamas in the way that Jared Kushner did? I don't think that's likely. And so I think, and also you have to give credit to the Trump administration. Their unconventional, to use a euphemism, approach to the Middle East has worked pretty favorably. And that includes billions of dollars of deals with both Saudi Arabia and other Gulf entities that both the Trump family, but particularly Jared Kushner, has engaged in, has in many ways won them more buy-in from the Arab world, and has facilitated, I think, basically a more favorable outcome here. Now, I think one really key thing to highlight is Netanyahu's strike on Qatar.
Yeah, I was going to go there.
This is really the turning point, right?
I agree.
Because I think if there's anyone that is really good at sensing leverage, it is Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And what he got there was, let's not forget what happened. Netanyahu overruling his security, military, intelligence apparatus to say, I want to strike the Hamas negotiators in Qatar, which, by the way, has a U.S. base and is not a country that is on the outs with America. If anything, they just gave a plane to America. So Trump was famously not happy about this. But again, he sensed the leverage on this. And so he said he got Netanyahu famously in the Oval Office to call Qatar and apologize in front of photographers.
Yeah.
Now, not live video. I don't believe there's live video of Netanyahu calling Qatar and apologizing, but there's photos of it.
Yeah.
And the photos don't look great for Netanyahu.
Yeah.
At the same time, Donald Trump also then offered essentially overruling the standard approach of getting Congress to ratify this, a treaty with Qatar, a security treaty. And there's some consternation perhaps in the Arab world over whether Donald Trump gave Qatar too much. But regardless, Donald Trump sensed this opportunity saying, you know what, I'm going to put my leverage on, now I've given Qatar a lot. Now Netanyahu owes me one because he really made a mistake here. We're going to end this Gaza war once and for all. And I think they were successful in ending the Gaza war. Everything lined up perfectly for this. I don't think that Biden would have been able to get this. There's a news cycle about how former Secretary of State Tony Blinken came out saying, well, they basically adopted our plan. And blah, blah, blah. It's true. It's a very similar plan to what Blinken and the Biden administration negotiated.
I've got the quote. It's good that President Trump adopted and built on the plan the Biden administration developed after months of discussion with Arab partners, Israel, and the Palestinian Authority. That was his tweet.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those things where I don't think that helps. I know for a fact that this administration, we all know that politics runs everything, including, it's supposed to be that politics in America stops at the water edge, but it truly doesn't. I know for a fact that this administration has gone to its predecessors and said, you were terrible, but we're going to take these few initiatives you did, and we're going to say it was our idea, and we're just going to run with them. I personally am of the view of saying, okay, I think I want, if I were in that position, I'd say, well, I think our initiatives, I believe in so much that they're in America's national interest, and go ahead. You trash us all you want. I think this is, but others may disagree with giving credit even when it's not due. I think if anyone who serves in government will tell you that the best way to have your ideas actually last or outlast you is to not take credit for them. But anyway, so I think the things that I don't think people appreciate enough, and maybe I'll put this in the homework, but Martin Indyk was an Australian who became American and became the U.S. ambassador to Israel and had senior positions in both Clinton and George W. Bush administrations. He came out with a book on Henry Kissinger and what Kissinger did in the Middle East. And interestingly enough, Martin Indyk came to have some regrets about the way that he did his own diplomacy in a way that was different than Kissinger, because Kissinger famously was pretty ruthless, right? Very realpolitik, just ends justify means. But in the Middle East, Indyk said, if you look at what Kissinger accomplished, it was more lasting because he didn't prioritize peace. Yeah. He prioritized stability. And I think that's a really interesting take to the Middle East. I don't think this applies to the whole world as much. The Middle East is unique here. And the way that right now, what we don't have, we as much as we have a ceasefire agreement, I am less optimistic than I was just a week ago that we are going to have any sort of lasting peace, because I'm looking at like how the stability of the region, and I'm looking at the dynamics that gave rise to or basically the central questions of this debate: Jerusalem refugees, borders, historical claims, on internal security. I don't see any progress on any of these really. Besides maybe some rhetorical support for some of these. I don't see structurally major changes. I still see more aspirations than not. And in many ways, you could say the Oslo Accords that took place in the 90s during the Clinton administration and died in 2000 at Camp David, they were overreach. They increased our hopes and dreams so much so that when they were dashed, it led to the Intifada, that led to violence. And you should not aim for home runs with a peace agreement. You should instead aim for incremental progress. And what I don't see this administration doing is paying enough attention to Gaza to make that incremental progress. What's happened in the last week since this occurred? Hamas has reasserted control over Gaza, has started killing, executing people in the streets, and basically eliminating any threats. Let's not forget that the 20-point plan that the administration negotiated through Witkoff and Jared Kushner, I tell people not to trust Americans named Jared, but here we are. That 20-point plan included basically Hamas disarming and not being a political player in the future of Gaza. And Trump initially tolerated some violence by Hamas and said on Air Force One before he even arrived into Israel that, that's going to happen. It's early days or whatever. Yeah. But Hamas has only become more aggressive in asserting its control. And there was polling on not too long ago on who in Gaza, who the Palestinians wanted to run their government. And they were given options of their territory. The options were Hamas, the Fatah or the Palestinian Authority, and Israel. And do you know who won?
It would be, I think it'd be Hamas.
Trick question. None of the above. That's who won the plurality of support. None of them.
But who got the most out of the three of them?
It was Hamas, but like they were all like
nothing.
You know what I mean? Yeah. It was like not a significant margin whatsoever.
Yeah.
And that was just one poll, and it's hard to do polling in Gaza.
Of course
obviously.
it is. Yeah.
So I think what gave me hope a week ago when I was when I was talking about this was the fact that there was this international stabilization force where for the first time we saw the Arab and Muslim world actually putting skin in the game, saying, you know what, we're going to have boots on the ground.
Theoretically, yeah.
Yeah. And for so long, they would give money, and Palestinians received a lot of international aid and assistance, but it didn't actually lead to stability. It was just, in many ways, it was just money that did not lead to a dramatic improvement in their lives. Now, the other things that I want to highlight in terms of why I'm less optimistic now than I was a week ago.
Sorry, can we talk a little bit more about the peace? Why the peace happened now before we get to that? Because that's coming out.
Yeah.
Because I've got a couple of a couple of things that you didn't mention, which I think, at least for me, which I think might be a factor. I'm going to just divvy this up quickly into from Hamas's point of view and from Israel's point of view, because obviously both of them have their interests, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's start with from Hamas's point of view. Why the peace now? Until recently, Hamas had a whole bunch of allies that they could lean on. But first, at the end of last year, the Lebanese allies got their balls blown off by beepers. Then the end of the Hezbollah banking system during that period hurt Bashar al-Assad in Syria, and then Iran's implacable enemies came to power in Syria. So they were kind of indirect allies with Hamas. They're gone. Then Iran is thoroughly exposed by Israel and America in the middle of this year. Russia basically gave them a talk to the hand for the last few years. So that left as their only friendly voices, Hamas, Turkey, Qatar, and Egypt.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Trump had something each of them wanted. For Turkey, Trump had sanctions relief and F-35 planes.
Yep.
For Qatar, you've already discussed this. He had a security agreement. That's basically the next best thing to NATO for Qatar, except for Qatar didn't need to do anything. They just had to accept America's security. That's a pretty sweet situation. Ukraine would like that.
Yeah.
For Egypt, Trump had the potential guarantee that he would keep Palestinian refugees out of Egypt, which was their biggest concern, because they have nightmares about the Palestinian refugees all moving into Egypt, right?
Yeah.
So they all, given that Trump leveraged those three things, they all pressured Hamas hugely. Hamas, which is isolated and weak at this point in time, and they got nothing else. According to
less support than ever amongst Gazans.
Yes. According to the Wall Street Journal, Qatar and Turkey warned they would no longer host Hamas's political leadership, and Egypt would stop pressing for Hamas to have a say in Gaza's post-war governance if they didn't deal now. And this deal that was on the offer at this point in time was basically the final deal that Hamas was going to be offered, which would allow them to survive in some form.
Yeah.
And so it made sense for them to go at this moment. So from Hamas's point of view, that's why I think it happened now. Mm-hmm. It couldn't have happened before Iran was bombed.
Yeah.
Since then, it could have happened any of that period of time,
yeah.
but that Trump went now. From Israel's point of view, we talked about the 2011 negotiations before. The architect of that, a guy called Gershon Baskin, said that Hamas had agreed to the exact same terms in September 2024, according to him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure I believe that, because Hamas have this tendency to say they agree to something and then backslide a little afterwards.
The whole concept they call it yes, but.
Yeah, yes,
and
but.
And famously, exactly. Trump said, take the win, Bibi.
Yes.
Instead of ignoring the but.
Exactly. Also, I'm pretty sure the September 2024 proposal did not allow the IDF to potentially be hanging around indefinitely like this deal does. But yeah, pretty similar. Regardless, Netanyahu rejected it.
Yeah.
That much we are pretty sure of. And in fact, rejected any agreement before a change of government in Washington, apparently.
Yep.
They thought they could get a better deal from Trump, which makes sense for the reasons you just said, that Trump was friendly towards them. But also, back then, they were trying to deal with Hezbollah as well, and Iran as well. They weren't going to do anything in September 2024 while they were still trying to deal with those other guys. Is it like Netanyahu at that point in time was trying to deal with a bunch of issues at once.
They famously had more intelligence on Hezbollah. They were expecting that sort of attack from Hezbollah, and they were never short of targets in Iran because they had completely compromised the entire Iranian military intelligence apparatus, but they were not prepared for Hamas.
Totally. So since then, Iran, Hezbollah, Syria have all been taken care of.
Yeah.
Israel's also taken out Hamas's leader, the mastermind of October 7, and his successor as well. So most of
the leadership.
Yeah. So most of their unfinished business taken care of as of 3 months ago.
Yeah.
Netanyahu could argue to the people back home, the war was a security success for them. It wasn't a diplomatic success, that's for sure. But Hamas were on their knees at that point in time militarily. And going on with the war at this point in time would yield not many more security benefits, but a lot of, it would erode their international reputation so much more. Like they're already in enough trouble internationally, and it just get worse and worse and worse for not much bang. America had already drawn the 20-point plan up a few weeks before Israel attacked Qatar, but I agree with you, that was the critical moment. Because at that point in time, I don't know if they were ever going to reveal that 20-point plan or if they were just going to hold on to it for a while or whatever, or if they had a plan to reveal the plan. But I do agree, Israel attacking Qatar, that's the moment. Because it was a huge stuff up. Not only is Qatar a very strong ally of Trump's, personally, but on top of that, they missed their targets as well. They're going after the leadership, they missed the leadership. It's a complete stuff up. It was against security advice, and they pissed Trump off. It gave Trump an excuse to rein them in before they went fully rogue. And because there was already a rogue move, and Trump's just going, oh, Bibi, I can't control this guy. What's he doing? Let's end this now. Trump could credibly use this as an excuse to abandon Israel if they didn't toe the line at that moment. Like, he needed an excuse, and that gave him the excuse. According to Axios, Trump told Netanyahu...
That's Barak Ravid, the same journalist that I highlighted before, because he's so good.
Yes, you did. Well, according to him, Trump called Netanyahu and told him that the peace plan was take it or leave it, and leave it means we walk away from you. That's what he said. And of all the people, you would believe Trump if he says that, because he is capable of that. And so Trump, you mentioned him forcing Netanyahu to apologize to Qatar and pressuring him, and then he also pressured him to agree to the 20-point plan. So that makes sense for why. And also, I should say, the deal was a good deal for Israel as well. It was a great deal for Israel. Netanyahu could argue that this is the best deal we're ever going to get. Hamas agreed to surrender all hostages up front under no conditions. That's a good deal. And the deal specifically allows Israel the flexibility to restart the war whenever they want. That's a pretty good deal for Israel. They might as well give it a go. So he's got this situation where Trump is saying, if you don't accept this, I'm walking away. They've gotten everything they want militarily already, or almost everything, and they've got this golden deal. So, of course, Israel's going to go for it. So I think when you add those two things in from both sides, that's the reason it happened right now, is my take on that kind of thing. And I just want to pick up on your Biden thing as well, about talking about Blinken and Biden. I don't know if you believe this or not. I just don't know. But according to that negotiator I described before, Gershon Baskin, Biden's team wasn't interested in the deal in September 2024 either. It wasn't just Netanyahu. Biden's team didn't care about it. According to him, Hamas agreed to the terms, but Biden's officials disregarded it. He said members of the American negotiating team were as frustrated as I was in their inability to convince Biden and Biden's people to look seriously at a deal on the table. So I don't know what's going on there, but I just put it out there.
By November of 2024, they were setting up that deal.
They'll try. But at that point in time, Netanyahu's saying, I'm waiting till the election's over.
No, that's what I mean, though, is that they set up they had a ceasefire when Donald Trump took office.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah, so, sure. But it was a different, it wasn't the same deal as this, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I ask you, though, before we get back to what you were talking about before, because there's just a few preliminary things I want to get off the table. There's a question we need to answer, which is, how much credit does Trump get then?
I think every expert that I've seen says that he deserves credit because he got the Arab world to put pressure on Hamas, and he got Netanyahu, and he put pressure on Netanyahu to come to the table more effectively than any other president could in many ways.
I agree.
I don't think there's much of a debate, to be honest.
And by the way, but there's even Democrats who give him credit, like Mark Kelly, for instance.
How much credit does President Trump deserve for this deal?
I think he should get a lot of credit. I mean, this was his deal. He worked this out. He sent Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, over to negotiate this, and so far has gone well.
Most Democrats give him credit as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, you've mentioned Netanyahu, but I want to focus on the other side. I mean, he definitely has strong ties with Netanyahu. He's very popular on the Israeli right as well, which is important for Netanyahu because Netanyahu depends on the Israeli right.
Oh, he's very popular in Israel.
Yeah, just full stop.
Yeah, do you see the posters and the, and the banners in Israel and how they boo Netanyahu? They don't boo Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And even Israelis who don't necessarily, lefty Israelis who don't love what Donald Trump has done domestically, still love what they did to get the hostages home. I don't think maybe non-Israelis appreciate just how huge this was in Israel. The hostages were all known by name. There are posters of them everywhere. Every nightly news had a new update on them. This was huge on the Israeli psyche.
But also, it's a very rare, I'd say unique situation to have someone who is so well loved by a group of people who can credibly walk away. And he really could. He really could credibly walk away, and they still loved him anyway. But that's a very unique position to be in. I want to pick up what you were saying about the Gulf monarchies, though, about the other side. Yeah. The fact that Trump has a strong relationship with Egypt, with Turkey, with all the Gulf monarchies. He would literally be the first US president I can think of ever to have strong relationships with everyone in the region. Everyone. Yeah. In particular, Qatar, who were critical supporters of Hamas. You could, in fact, in my view, you could argue that Trump, in his own way, is a Gulf monarch. He's a Gulf monarch from America. He's an authoritarian who is corrupt as all hell, couldn't give a shit about civil liberties or morality or piety. Yeah. Overtly, he couldn't care about that. He's happy to blatantly pressure people. He's transactional. He's into personal diplomacy. And he worships deal-making. He is basically an Arab monarch.
Remember where he did his first state visit in his first administration? Most administrations go to Mexico or Canada to make it easy on themselves. Same time zone, not long travel time, well-known like partners, and lots of communication. It's super easy. Do you remember where he went? His first
Saudi Arabia with the glowing ball,
Exactly.
the glowing orb.
Yeah, no, he's been teeing this up for some time.
That might have been a magic 8-ball. That glowing ball saying peace has a chance.
I will say it's just that sort of democratic or just almost not unanimous, but pretty wide-ranging group that approves of what he's done on this is unique to this region and this region alone. I don't think you see the same sort of approval of his conduct in almost any other part of the world.
No, absolutely. Also, on top of that, his reputation is perfect for this. Both sides in this conflict constantly, in my view, okay, this is just me mind reading now, but still, I think they wanted the talks to fail over and over again so they could blame the other side. I think that was the dynamic of this relationship between Israel and Gaza, that they were trying to blame the other side for the failures. And Trump has a reputation of just barreling along and not caring, and they know that.
Yeah.
And he did it. Remember that before I tell you this. Remember that quote of Trump's about Netanyahu. I love this quote. He was fine with it. He's got to be fine with it. He has no choice. With me, you've got to be fine. I thought that was such a great quote. But yeah, remember when Hamas only gave a partial yes to the 20-point plan, and Netanyahu was like, "That's a no. These guys are dicking us around. That's a no." And Trump was, "No, that's a yes, and you're going to accept it."
Yeah.
And Netanyahu did. Like a Trump.
That's the alternative to Trump.
Exactly. So Trump brings an expectation of being unreasonable, which means he can get you to do things that if it was Biden, they'd go, "Oh, look, we'll twist his arm." Like he's a reasonable guy. But with Trump, they go, "I'm not going to bother. If he tells me I'm going to do something, I know that I'm not going to be able to win this. Like he's going to be stubborn as all hell. I know what Trump's like. I might as well just go with it."
Trump has had leverage on Biden since he took office. And so it's just, and he got Biden to not attack Iran after, do you remember when Iran had to retaliate to a certain extent? And there were Israeli planes to do more attacks on Iran, and Trump got them to stop. He got Israel to give more aid to Gaza when there was all sorts of accusations of Israel starving Palestinians in Gaza, and Bibi was like, "No, there's no starvation," and Trump was like, "Yeah, there is." And all of a sudden, there were aid trucks going in. Yeah. Trump has leverage. So the question is, like, why did he wait until Qatar to use it? He could have used this leverage earlier if he wanted to on Netanyahu.
Well, like I said, he could have, but like I said, I think the leverage became, I don't know if he was thinking this or not, I think the leverage became a lot more effective and powerful as soon as they took Iran out of the picture.
I think that was a little while ago.
It's not that long ago. It's what, June, July? So it's like 3 months. I know those months matter. People have died during that period. I understand that. But just, I mean, like in terms of like the context of a 2-year conflict, it's really just the last few months. I think it's been actually viable.
Yeah.
So, like the way Trump's tried to do it, to make this happen. Maybe they've been trying since then. Maybe it takes that long. I don't know.
Yeah. The reason why I'm less optimistic now about something more than just a ceasefire occurring is I think to get a lasting peace, you need to have a lot more attention to the region, and you have to be willing to give a lot more political capital to the region. That I don't think on both fronts this administration shows a willingness to do that. Yeah. There's so much backstory on this. It's hard to know where to draw a line. I think, to be honest, the most likely outcome is we're going to go to October 6, 2023. That is the most, what it feels like to me in terms of we're going to have Israel have control of 53% of Gaza.
That's where they are at the moment. Yep.
And I don't think that we're going to see much of a shift from that, because I don't think the dynamics are going to shift more than that. I will really be surprised to see if there are international peacekeepers on the ground in Gaza, what that looks like or how long they last there. They have a sort of checkered history in the region, especially in the eyes of many Israelis. There were UN peacekeepers in Lebanon for some time, and the Israelis felt like they were just watching as Hezbollah shot rockets at Israel. And then let's not forget U.S. Marines in Lebanon as well, and how they were bombed by Hezbollah and completely evacuated all U.S. troops as a result. This was during the Reagan administration. So I think that is... when the rubber hits the road and you actually can you imagine Indonesian troops being willing to shoot Palestinians in case there's unrest? What is that? How do you actually adjudicate that, right? This has to be a locally led initiative, and how do you navigate that? But even before that, what did not give me hope was the same day that Donald Trump went to the Knesset and had his day in the Knesset being feted by everyone, left and right. The opposition also supported Netanyahu and spoke glowingly in Israel. The same day, Donald Trump then went to Egypt for this sort of peace gathering. And what was remarkable about that is, one, Netanyahu did not come. Supposedly, there's a lot of conflicting things. He said because it was a holiday and he wasn't able to. Also, people are saying it's because the Erdogan and Turkey refused to go there if Netanyahu was going to be there. Supposedly, Trump didn't even know that Netanyahu wasn't planning to go there. But Trump found out about it when he arrived in Israel, and then he called Sisi in Egypt. He said, "Hey, why isn't Bibi coming to this peace conference in Egypt?" And so he's like, "All right, well, maybe Bibi should come." We shouldn't forget, most of these governments in the Middle East are not democracies, but they still have to be sensitive to public opinion. And I'll just say public opinion of Israel, most of these countries, is not very high. And so being seen with the Israeli prime ministers, maybe not at the top of their wish lists.
Sure.
Regardless, Sisi gave the invite supposedly to to Netanyahu. But then there was consternation about people like Erdogan not wanting Netanyahu to go there, and so maybe they gave an excuse of it being a Jewish holiday, so he didn't end up going. But more than just that, there was one person alone who I think it was most telling that him not being there was really sort of the death knell for any sort of regional peace agreement. And I think this is one of the reasons why Hamas attacked at all. It is Saudi Arabia. MBZ was not there.
Right.
He, in my view, is the most powerful Sunni leader in the region. He is the reason why Hamas attacked, because it looked like Israeli-Saudi normalization was actually going to occur. And Hamas wanted to sidetrack it by all means not possible, right?
It's back in 2023 you're talking about.
October 6, 2023, right? Yeah. So in that period, the Israelis were convinced that Hamas, even though their charter did not change, even though they still did not want to see the state of Israel exist, the Israelis thought that economic growth was the pathway to get sort of normalcy, and that things were actually moving in the right direction. Because if you actually look at public polling, most Gazans want just economic growth in many ways. Interestingly enough, Israelis and Gazans, but also Palestinians in the West Bank, if you actually look at public polling and you look at most important problem, you have that. We see that in the U.S. and Australia all the time. The most important problem is always security.
Yeah.
That really dictates more than any polling in Europe or in the U.S. or Australia. It's security. But economic growth is not far apart. But yeah, the fact, though, that they couldn't get the leader of Saudi Arabia to come to Egypt, I think was more telling of this being an ephemeral aspiration than anything else. So yes, I think we have a ceasefire agreement, and I think it's a significant achievement, and I think Donald Trump was unique in being able to get it done for a number of reasons that we've detailed, but I don't see this being likely to result in a long-term peace.
Let me ask you a few questions about that. First of all, in the initial exchange you described before, the prisoner exchange, one thing I found interesting, didn't get a lot of coverage, but to me I found it interesting, having been through a few polls myself, is that Hamas demanded the release of a guy called Marwan Barghouti, who's a Fatah figure. And
serving 5 life sentences
for planning terrorist attacks in the second Intifada. Okay.
That's right.
Israel refused to let him go. They let a lot of people go who've done a lot of bad stuff. They wouldn't let him go. The reason why that's interesting is because, once again, having seen a few polls, I know that he is a potential future leader of the Palestinians.
Yeah.
He is one of the few popular figures in Gaza.
Yeah.
And one of the problems they've had until now is the Palestinian Authority, which was the closest thing they had to potentially a governing body, was this sclerotic organization run by a 180-year-old who was incredibly corrupt and super unpopular. No one's voting for these guys, right? There is just no prospect. There is no leader who can unite this place. And it's very hard to have any kind of country without a leader or any kind of government without a leader. This guy could potentially be a leader. Now, I don't say that from my opinion. I'm just saying that from the polls. And I'm saying that from what I've read. I know nothing about this guy. Maybe he's awful. But it seems to me like I remember back in 2023, one of the knocks on Netanyahu was that he was doing whatever he could to thwart the potentiality of the West Bank getting together with Gaza and actually creating some kind of unity. And this guy potentially could be someone who helps create that unity. I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think
and Israel won't let him go.
Right, yeah. And Palestinians say that he is the Palestinian Mandela. And, Israelis would disagree, especially given his ties to attacks. And that was a bridge too far for many Israelis. I think there's a couple of people that are worth reading or listening to on this. One is Ahmed Fouad Al-Khatib, and then another is Joseph Broud, and they are both experts on. One of them has family in Gaza, and they're both experts on this, and they have spoken on this matter, and they've spoken about the fact that there are a number of civil society leaders that could very well rise up if there are the sort of domestic opportunities to do so. Basically, if Hamas is somehow disarmed, if there is an international peacekeeping force, that man, what they call the Palestinian Mandela, he's been in prison a long time. There are doctors and lawyers and engineers in Gaza who know what's on the ground in Gaza a lot better than a man who's been in prison for some time. And I think there are all sorts of different entities in Gaza that I think would perhaps have more legitimacy than a man who, like I said, has been imprisoned.
My next question is, you've already flagged potentially where you think this is going. But I think let's explicitly discuss the disarming of Hamas, which seems to be the next sticking point. You've already mentioned that the executions that Hamas has, they basically, as soon as Israel withdrew, Hamas moved in to try and sort of, I suppose, retake the territory, and they bound and dragged a bunch of people into the street, executed them. There were at least 33 in the first weekend, and they kept on going after that.
And even a few younger figures, it's been pretty disturbing, like children that have been killed for collaborating with Israel.
They said they were criminals and collaborators with Israel. They later said they were criminals guilty of killing, whatever that means. Trump said, as you said before, we might as well play the clip, he gave them approval to do this, to stop crime.
Of Hamas rearming, instituting themselves as a Palestinian police force, shooting rivals. What is your message to Hamas?
We are standing because they do want to stop the problems, and they've been open about it, and we gave them approval for a period of time. You have to understand, they've lost probably 60,000 people. That's a lot of retribution. They've lost 60,000 people. And the ones that are living right now were, in many cases, very young when this all started. And we are having them watch that there's not going to be big crime or some of the problems that you have when you have areas like this that have been literally demolished.
But what seems to be the case is as soon as Israel withdrew, Hamas was trying to establish dominance over rival clans and families. That's what it seems like. And even as Trump was saying he approved and understood what they were doing, CENTCOM was strongly urging Hamas to fully stand down, to strictly adhere to Trump's 20-point peace plan and disarm without delay. I assume Trump...
CENTCOM in what army? Just to confirm, to clarify, that's the U.S. Central Command.
Yes.
That is in the same way that the U.S. has Indo-Pacific Command.
Yes.
Central Command is U.S. like Middle Eastern military forces.
Yes.
And again, you in one army is saying stand down,
well,
right?
Well, theoretically, they have 200 people supervising without any boots on the ground.
From Israel, not in Gaza.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's a lot of headlines about the U.S. sending troops to 200 troops to the region, to the Middle East. They're not going to Gaza.
Yes, yeah. Look, I mean, that's a good point you make. But also, I suspect Trump was not necessarily serious about what he was saying. I think he was trying to give him some leeway without sabotaging the peace deal, because that's kind of the mode he's been in for the last few weeks.
Yeah.
Obviously, after a while, he felt like they were taking the piss, and then he tweeted out, "If Hamas continues to kill people in Gaza, which was not the deal, we will have no choice but to go in and kill them. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Drink." And, like he is drinking. And he also told CNN that Israeli forces could return to the streets as soon as I say the word. He must love this situation where he's the actual boss of the Middle East at the moment, the way he wants to be of America, but the Middle East is letting him do it. Anyway, my question to you is what's going to happen from here with disarming? Because Hamas fighters, they apparently on the weekend seized the Jordanian field hospital complex in Gaza City as well after a gun battle with a rival Palestinian groups. Now they've got an operations center as well. Trump is asked about disarming, and this is what he has to say.
Gaza, how long will it take Hamas to disarm, and can you guarantee that is going to happen?
Well, they're going to disarm, and because they said they were going to disarm. And if they don't disarm, we will disarm them.
How will you do that?
I don't have to explain that to you. But if they don't disarm, we will disarm them. They know I'm not playing games. Okay? Now, we did something monumental. We got the hostages. But we have told them we want to disarm, and they will disarm. And if they don't disarm, we will disarm them. And it'll happen quickly and perhaps violently. But they will disarm. Do you understand me?
Yes. You say
because
quickly.
everyone says, oh, well, they won't disarm. They will disarm. And I spoke to Hamas, and I said, you're going to disarm, right? Yes, sir, we're going to disarm. That's what they told me. They will disarm, or we will disarm them. Got it? Okay.
What is the deadline you're going to put on that? You say quickly, sir. Sir, you say quickly, but what is the deadline you're going to put on that before you take action?
A reasonable period of time. Pretty quickly. A reasonable period of time.
So, Jared, will they disarm or not? And does it even matter?
Yes, it matters, and no, they won't.
Okay.
It's just that simple. Like, why would Hamas? I mean, again, I can't emphasize enough how they have only become less popular. So famously, George W. Bush during the Bush administration, the sort of democracy agenda had elections in Gaza, and Hamas won those elections. Now, if they were to run those elections today, I don't think Hamas would win. I don't think the Gazan people, and I think public opinion shows this. Go ahead.
No, I was saying, to be fair, they didn't even win them the first time. They got plurality. Yeah.
You speak parliamentary system better than I do, but still, that's number one, right?
Yeah. They got more than the other parties, but it's just like a situation you described before where everyone lost, and they lost by slightly less.
Yeah. Right now, the sort of pathway forward on this really is anyone going to be willing to disarm Hamas? Is anyone going to be willing to incur casualties that are a necessity for disarming Hamas?
Netanyahu would
Exactly. Yeah. Only Netanyahu will. And also, even we talk about rebuilding and how how Gaza needs so many, like billions of dollars to rebuild.
Yeah.
What country wants to rebuild a Gaza that will be run by Hamas and very well could be decimated again? This looks terrible right now. they talk about momentum for peace and how you want to build up that positive momentum. As long as the Trump administration doesn't want to actually expend more political capital on this, which even if they did, it's not even clear that they'd win. I don't think there's much of a major transformative period in Gaza for us. I mean, we shouldn't forget what Trump said. He said, this is not just the end of the war, it's a historical dawn of a new Middle East. And I just don't think that's likely. I think we had some momentum from that last week, Monday, maybe Tuesday. But the fact that they didn't have Saudi Arabia in the room, and the fact that obviously they didn't have Israel in the room, and the fact that I don't think the Trump administration wants to spend political capital on the Middle East much more beyond this is really not good signs for this transforming much of anything.
It's also possible, I mean, it sounds like I'm being a smartass, but I'm not. I'm actually dead serious here, that the thing that would stop Trump forcing Hamas to disarm would be his desire to win a Nobel Peace Prize. Him thinking, I can't concede that this didn't work. I have to spend the next however long acting like this is my 9th war. This is my 8th war that I solved because I'm trying to win the Nobel Peace Prize.
Right. But the thing is, I think there's one thing to try to have peace, another thing to just have a ceasefire maintained. And if Hamas takes control and goes back to October 6, 2023, he can still claim victory there.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that if he was actually trying to create a long-term solution for the area, he would say what you just said before, which is we can't afford Hamas to be in government, to be a de facto government again in Gaza and sabotage any attempt to try and rebuild the country in a more sustainable fashion, in a way that isn't just going back to the same old cycle. Right now, he'd be happy to put up with that because it means there's no fighting and there's no war. And he might get his Nobel Peace Prize if he just bluffs hard enough.
Yeah, if he just says it's peace.
On that note, let me ask you, according to Rubio, this is a pretty significant period.
This is clearly, in my mind, I think in the mind of everyone in this room, probably one of the most important days for world peace in 50 years. And that's not an exaggeration.
Okay. And if this was actually the beginnings of a lasting, serious peace in the Middle East, in Gaza, I'd agree. I think that would be significant for 50 years, like the most significant in 50
years. The end of the Cold War?
Yeah, I think
this is more significant.
If this is real, if in 10 years' time we come back and there is thriving peace in that region, yeah, I do.
Oh, thriving peace in the region.
Yeah.
Because let's not forget that the 20-point plan doesn't really talk about the West Bank.
No, I know. I'm fully aware. I'm just saying, like, if this is the beginning of the whole thing being sorted out, then yeah, I do think it's. I'm not,
Agreed.
I'm not saying I'm not shitting on the Cold War being over. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, it's right up there.
Yeah.
I would say if, and that's a massive if. So let's deal with the reality now rather than Rubio's hopes.
Yeah.
Does Donald Trump deserve the Nobel Peace Prize?
I mean, it's up to some Norwegians to decide. Who am I? And also, let's not forget why they gave Obama the Nobel Peace Prize. It's because he wasn't George W. Bush.
Yes.
His own team is very open about the fact that it was a problem for them that they won the Nobel Peace Prize. He himself said he did not merit the Nobel Peace Prize. And it was a domestic frustration that they had to, like, politically, it was a liability that he won the Nobel Peace Prize.
You know, that might be the only thing that the whole of America is united on, that Obama did not deserve the Nobel Peace Prize. Something every single person in America agrees on.
You know, it's funny you mentioned Obama. I've been mentioning Obama a lot this week when talking about that polling on the Australian attitudes towards the U.S. And my argument is that, Australians don't love Donald Trump, but they still see the U.S. as an indispensable ally in this age of strategic competition. I went through my whole argument last time I was here. But I also said that it's also, the alliance is bigger than any one president. It really is. Yeah. In the same way that we had 8 years of Obama. Did we have an alliance with Obama? You know, what's the lasting impact of the alliance with Obama? There are now Marines in the North. That's something that was agreed upon during the Obama administration. But structurally, I think that would have occurred no matter what. That whole concept of structure versus agency that I've talked about before, like you have to see, like some things are going to happen no matter what. And I think the U.S.-Australia alliance like benefits from so many strengths bilaterally that it's going to continue practically no matter what. Even if the Zelensky meeting happened to Prime Minister Albanese, I think it's recoverable. I don't think there's long-term or even medium-term damage to the alliance. It's just like we need to stop focusing on just the president being America, because that's just not how this works.
I'll say a couple of things about the Nobel Prize quickly. I do have a sense that we should move on, but first of all, just a couple of things. I mean, it has been mentioned that the deadline for the period was the January 31st. So at that point in time, what's he going to win it for? How well he served fries at McDonald's? I'm not exactly sure what he did in 2024 to deserve the Nobel Peace Prize. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
And for being convicted of 34 felonies, is that what he's going to win it for? Also, if I'm the Nobel Committee, even if Trump did something 100% Nobel worthy, that we all agree unanimously should deserve to win the Nobel Peace Prize, why would you award him the Nobel Peace Prize before 2029 when he's still got 3 years in office?
Yeah, you have to incentivize him to be better.
But not just yes, I agree, but not just that.
As a father of children, incentives really work.
Okay, that's true, but not just that. If he wins a Nobel Peace Prize and then he goes and invades Venezuela or a major American city or Greenland or like that's on them. He's a Nobel Peace Prize winner invading Greenland. They can't take that chance. That would be so humiliating. So if he's going to win it, number one, they'd want to give it a couple of years to see what happens in Israel to begin with. But secondly, if he's going to win it, that would be insane to give him that prize until he's finished his presidency. And he can't do any wild, weird, unpredictable damage to their brand.
Exactly.
It's just common sense.
I mean, they did give a Nobel Prize to Kissinger, so.
Yeah, sure. Yes.
There's a history.
Yes, that is true. But also, I was going to say that it's like this is something that I think not enough people appreciate as well, which is the actual winner, the Venezuela's opposition leader, Maria Machado. Who's been in hiding for the last 14 months for her life while sort of fighting for democratic rights in Venezuela. It's strange that the MAGA people are attacking her, like Stephen Chung saying, "Oh, this is the Nobel Committee is proving they place politics over peace." She's a bit of a conservative, at least for Venezuela. She's a conservative. Let's put it that way. Like in America, she may or may not be. In fact, she's probably be a Democrat. But she
NPR called her far right.
She's definitely not far right. But she's a capitalist, and they are rare in Venezuela. Like she wants to privatize the oil industry, and Trump would be very happy with that. But that would be rare in Venezuela. She loves that Trump put the pressure on Maduro for her. She tweeted out, "This recognition of the struggle of all Venezuelans is a boost to conclude our task. To conquer freedom, we are on the threshold of victory in today, and more than ever, we count on President Trump, the people of the United States, the peoples of Latin America, and the democratic nations of the world as our principal allies to achieve freedom and democracy. I dedicate this prize to the suffering people of Venezuela and to President Trump for his decisive support of our cause." He loved that.
I have to wonder if the Norwegians wanted that if they really thought that the Trump world would be supportive of her because they saw what he was doing in Venezuela and they thought this would somehow lessen the heat.
Maybe.
I also have to give credit that NPR came out with a correction saying that she's not far right, she's centrist. But they initially, for a few hours, were calling her far right. And my more conservative friends were very angry at NPR.
I have seen some left-wing activists calling her far right, not just NPR. But she's not. And by the way, if you haven't seen the reaction to her winning the Nobel Prize, her reaction, it's worth having a look. Could we play a bit of it, Lockie? It's quite kind of heartwarming, actually. It's quite nice.
It shall be announced here at the Nobel Institute that you will be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for 2025.
Oh my God.
So the warmest congratulations to you, Maria.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Well, I have no words. I thank you so much, but I hope you understand this is a movement. This is a achievement of a whole society. I am just one person. I certainly do not deserve this. Oh my God!
I think both the movement and you deserve it.
That's nice. That's nice.
Lovely.
Yeah, it is. So,
we also shouldn't forget that Nobel also gave their prize to Aung San Suu Kyi in Myanmar, who really did not mind what was happening to the Muslims in Myanmar while she was the leader of Myanmar. So there's controversy there. Again, if you don't want to get any criticism, then you can just take your toys and go home.
Yes. Also, the other point I want to make about this Nobel Prize stuff is I just want to take a moment to just consider how embarrassing it is, how much people indulge Trump on this Nobel Prize thing. Like, first of all, let's start with Mike Johnson.
I'm proud to tell you that together with my friend Speaker Ohana of the Israeli Knesset, the equivalent of our Congress, we're going to embark upon a project together to rally speakers and presidents of parliaments around the world so that we will jointly nominate President Donald J. Trump for next year's Nobel Peace Prize. No one has ever deserved that prize more, and that is an objective fact. As Speaker Ohana said before the Knesset yesterday,
that's an objective fact. Then let's move to House Rep Republican Buddy Carter. This is what he's got to say.
And that's why I'm introducing a resolution for a sense of Congress today that will honor him with the Nobel Peace Prize, and if need be, we'll call for a discharge petition on that. I hope we can work with the Speaker, though, and get it on the floor for a vote.
We should actually have competitions for who can come up with like the most ridiculous and meaningless thing that allows you to, on one hand, support Donald Trump and be his number one fan. On the other hand, do nothing of actual tangible substance.
My question is, do you think Buddy Carter actually knows what the Nobel Peace Prize is? Because he thinks Congress can award the Nobel Peace Prize. I'm wondering if he thinks it's the Nobel Peace Prize. Like it's just a Nobel Award, N-O-B-L-E. I'm wondering. Because it's a strange thing for him to suggest. But maybe in your competition, Randy Fine could take it one step further. Because he says the Nobel Prize wasn't enough. He tweeted, the Nobel Peace Prize isn't enough. If every living hostage is returned and lasting peace in the Middle East is secured, we should repeal the 22nd Amendment and thank the Lord for every day Donald Trump can be our president. There will never be another one like him. Then you've got the farmers in northern Israel who sabotage their own crops.
Some incredible images coming in. Look at your screen. Farmers in northern Israel are echoing that message in a big way. A massive message cut into their fields reading Nobel for Trump.
The way that you can hear her smile. She's so gleeful. It's like, look at your screen. You only say that when you see like a beautiful sight that is like emotional, right? Like, some crops. Okay.
Yes, a newborn baby or something, yeah.
I did that to my high school oval on my Year 12 muck-up day.
Nobel for Trump.
It was more of a drawing.
Sure. Just consider, is my point, just consider what it says about Trump. That every person on planet Earth knows how much he wants the Nobel Peace Prize. How much of a baby would you need to be before every person on Earth knows what you crave? Jared, do you know what award I crave? You probably don't, because I don't go on about it all the time. Cleo Bachelor of the Year.
So, what was it?
Nothing.
Cleo Bachelor of the Year?
Nothing. Cleo, give me that fucking award. Nothing.
Is this an Australian thing? I don't know what you're saying. I'm going to Google this.
The fact that everyone, A, knows what award Donald Trump wants is pathetic. But, B, the fact that they know they can openly admit that they know what award he craves without it being embarrassing to him in any way, shape or form. That is so much more pathetic. It means they think he is both juvenile and has zero dignity and is an idiot. That's the only way that you can think that he won't mind if you patronize him that obviously. It's extraordinary. I can't get over it, Jared.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what you're telling me anything new. This is
no, I know. I just don't feel we appreciate it enough.
Speaking of not new, I just Googled and confirmed that Clio magazine discontinued in 2016.
It's never gonna happen.
I don't know when you got married, but
2016, I bet Obama won it.
Also, just like Jared, I'm going to mention that past winners of this award you so desperately crave, Chaz. 1997, Kyle Sandilands.
Oh, see, he got it. It's all right. It's all right. Let's move on. I'll be okay. You have to carve it in your fields. It's okay. Let's try a different topic. Unless you have something else to say about Nobel. I think we've got enough abuse at this point in time, Jared. We can move on to a different topic.
I can't wait to see what they might get. My favorite, can I just say my favorite with ABC producers is especially when there was a lot of controversy about ABC's coverage of this in 2023 in particular, was the ways that I would be asked, just how Jewish are you? They wouldn't ask it ever explicitly. They'd ask around it, Yeah. And it's fun to just let the awkward silence linger.
Anyway, let's try Pete Hegseth because the Peppers are going to know that this is going to be a big one for me. Because the reason this podcast is late is because I wasted an entire night on Thursday night messing around with this story.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Because I was preparing it for Planet America and for PEP. And I started at like 10 p.m. And at like 5 a.m. I was like, oh shit, I spent all night working on this stupid story. Let me talk you through this. I think there has been a lot of confusion about these media rules, these new media rules at the Pentagon. On Thursday night, I'll tell you about my Thursday night. I saw lots of reporters talking about how bad these guidelines were when I was trying to prepare for this. But I saw very little quoting of the actual guidelines. Now that I thought was odd. Just lots of paraphrasing, even though they have the guidelines. These are media organizations. They all have the guidelines in front of them. Yeah. But they weren't quoting it. And so my bullshit antennae just pricked up straight away. So I started to hunt around the internet for a copy of the guidelines, which were just very hard to find. After a long time, I found a copy. The Federalist, which is a conservative outlet, posted it. You can read them for yourself in the homework. It's right there in the blurb. I'm not going to dick you around like the rest of the media did. They're right there. Read them for yourself. It won't take you all night. Anyway, so they're there. And the first thing that leapt out at me was there was one quote I kept seeing in articles, and only one quote. Like whenever they quoted these guidelines, it was one sentence. And that sentence wasn't in the guidelines. It was a close sentence, but there was a bit that they were that was in the guidelines that they had missed out in the middle of the sentence. Here's the Washington Post version of the story with their version of the quote as an example. The Department of War remains committed to transparency, to promote accountability and public trust. Their document says, using an acronym for the newly rebranded Department of War. However, Department of War information must be approved for public release, Jared, by an appropriate authorizing official before it's released, even if it is unclassified. Okay, so when you see that, just have a look at that quote there, Jared. It looks like they're saying information must be approved for public release before it's released. When they're talking, it looks like they're talking to journalists there. They're saying you can't publish something unless you get permission from us.
But who was that addressed to?
That's the thing. When you look at the actual guidelines, this is what they say. I've got it right here. You can see it for yourself. Department of War remains committed to transparency to promote accountability and public trust. However, Department of War information must be approved for public release by an appropriate authorizing official before it's released by any military member. Jared. Department of War civilian employee or contract employee, even if it's unclassified. In reality, that paragraph is directed at the military, not the press. They were just saying military people can't leak. Any info they release must be authorized by the press office. Now, my understanding is that's normal operations. That's been around forever. The military people have never been allowed to leak.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the Washington Post who seemed to have this incorrect wording. I mean, I would love to tee off on them and go, you guys are hopeless, do a full media watch on them. But it wasn't just them. Heaps of outlets. This quote kept coming up. I'll show you the proof. This is the New York Times. This is NPR. This is NBC. This is The Guardian. This is The Hill. This is military.com. This is The Conversation. This is the National Press Foundation. Worst of all was Politico, which had the same quote, but then followed it up with another quote, which was, failure to abide by these rules may result in suspension or revocation of your building pass and loss of access. In the actual doc, that quote I just read out was actually 3 pages earlier. They'd moved it to after it to take it out of context to make it look like if you don't follow those laws, then you're going to have your pass revoked. You're probably starting to see how I spent all night on this. I just go through publication after publication going, oh, wow, they got it. And so I spent hours flying around the internet trying to work out what was going on. My bullshit antenna was like flipping out at this point. It's getting all 360 degrees.
Can we just clarify? The Conversation, I don't think, does original reporting. It's just academics doing takes.
Sure.
As someone who writes on
Sure, but I'm saying
all the others, yes.
But you'd think an academic would get it right. But at this point in time, this is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking this can't be a misquote. All these publications can't be irresponsible. I mean, or at least not all in exactly the same way, with exactly the same wording. It can't be a misquote. They're all quoting exactly the same thing in exactly the same way. So is it the guidelines? Well, the guidelines I've got are from the Federalist. So you might go, Federalist. But I was pretty sure, for various reasons I won't go into because this is taking long enough, that those guidelines were correct. They were right. It's like 4 a.m. at this point. Definitely running out of time to prepare PEP. But I felt like I had to get this story straight because it's my job to work out exactly this kind of thing. The stuff that's too nuanced and obsessive for actual journalists to give a toss about, that's my turf. That's a T-shirt right there. So I kept hunting around for something that would make sense. And I happened upon this from time.com. Let me read this out word for word. The agency relaxed the new guidelines following negotiations with journalists after an earlier draft outlined last month was met with backlash. That draft, which stated that information must be approved for public release by an appropriate authorizing official before it is released, even if it's unclassified, was widely interpreted to mean that reporters would be required to seek approval from the Pentagon before publishing information that hadn't officially been released, or risk losing their credentials to report within the building. The updated policy will not mandate that approval. But the Pentagon Press Association, which represents journalists covering the department, said on Wednesday that the revised rules reporters are being asked to sign still appear designed to stifle a free press and potentially expose us to prosecution for simply doing our jobs. First of all, thank you, time.com. That's good reporting. That's very clear. Secondly, that's when I noticed the Federalist leak guidelines were labelled October guidelines. And every article I just showed you was published on September 20 or September 21. So what I think is the most likely scenario here by a long way, I can't know for sure because literally no one other than time.com has said anything about this, is that the super dodgy quote was in the original guidelines. The original ones that was published back in September. The media kicked up a stink, rightly so. The Pentagon relented. No one mentioned it other than time.com. No one published updates. No one did the new regulations. They wrote stories this week about it and no one corrected themselves or updated what had happened. No one explained the guidelines had been changed. No one explained the new situation. They all talked about it in the same way they talked about it in September 20. They just didn't run that quote anymore. They just disappeared the quote. So there were no quotes anymore, just paraphrases, which is what I noticed originally. Going, what are these paraphrases? They just decided to disappear any reference to the actual guidelines and just continue with the same attitude they had on September 20, even though the facts on the ground had changed. So they were misleading by omission. And you might think, well, this is really trivial stuff, but I think this is kind of important in terms of press responsibility here, especially given the whole story is about the role of the press and that they should be trusted in the Pentagon. Right? And the only people who even gave a clue about this was Time. Everyone else just was happy to mislead their audience. Okay, so then what are the new conditions? Is there anything wrong with the new conditions at all?
And if they were so bad, why would Fox News not sign up for them? And only one American News sign up for him, and maybe even just the Australian supposedly was open to signing up for him.
Yeah.
So much of this is unclear.
Yes.
Have you actually emailed or gotten in contact with any of the Pentagon reporters yourself?
No, I have not. It's a good question.
You should interview them.
Maybe I should. In fact, that's a great idea. I might just do that. They don't always talk to us when we try to talk to them, but I'll give it a go. Thank you, Jared. Let's talk about the new conditions, though. Because I have them in front of me. You can read them as well. You got them in front of you as well. The October guidelines, they are the current guidelines. All right? Look, they're not great. I don't like the conditions, but to me, they're what I would expect and what I'm used to from military-type people.
Yeah.
They warn the military that if they leak, they'll be breaking the law. Mm-hmm. And journalists are restricted from just walking around the Pentagon freely into any place they like. They list the areas for the press in the guidelines. As Fox's Brett Bayer said, though, when someone tweeted at him with, "Sorry, Fox News, no one should have unfettered access to classified areas. Press restrictions make sense. I was shocked to learn they didn't already exist." Brett Bayer replied, "We could never go in classified areas. Never." So that's not new. But journalists can publish what they like. It explicitly says members of the new news media are not required to submit their writings to the Department of War for approval. It says that.
Wow.
So that's all normal. Now, there is one threat to the press in there. I'll read it out to you. Any solicitation of Department of War personnel to commit criminal acts would not be considered protected activity under the First Amendment. So if they can prove that you solicited an illegal leak, you may be charged.
Because all those people in Hegseth's office, they were being begged to give a quote. It wasn't that they were complaining about their boss whatsoever.
That's one very good point. But the other thing is, that's not new. That's the law. You've always been in a situation where the press aren't necessarily protected by the First Amendment if they solicit an illegal leak. Ask Julian Assange. He'll tell you all about it. He was in real danger of being jailed for exactly that. They also have one means of controlling the press in their conditions. They write, news media who find themselves in possession of information that appears to be classified should discuss those materials with Pentagon press operations prior to publication. And they also say press passes may be denied, revoked, or not renewed if a person is reasonably determined to pose a security or safety risk to Department of War personnel or property. And a determination that an individual poses a security risk may be based on the unauthorized access, attempted unauthorized access, or unauthorized disclosure of classified information. And they say the press passes must be renewed either every 3 months, 6 months, or 1 year, depending on circumstances. So there is an implicit threat, Jared, that if you print something they don't like, they can revoke your press pass. That's always been the case. That's not new. But I'm just trying to be as transparent as possible. That is the closest thing they've got to a loaded gun for the media in those conditions, right? I should also say what doesn't help is that Hegseth either deliberately or because he's an idiot has been completely mischaracterizing the nature of the press's objections.
Well, I very much appreciate the question because it was interesting to watch. We had a chance to go along on the historic trip of Middle East peace, which our generation of veterans never dreamed would be possible. So you would think that the Pentagon press corps of all press corps would be front and center across the board on wanting to give credit to the president for forging this kind of peace, and instead what they want to talk about is a policy about them, which simply says maybe the policy should look like the White House or other military installations where you have to wear a badge that identifies that you're press, or you can't just roam anywhere you want. It used to be, Mr. President, the press could go anywhere, pretty much anywhere in the Pentagon, the most classified area in the world. Or also that if they sign on to the credentialing, they're not going to try to get soldiers to break the law by giving them classified information. So it's common sense stuff, Mr. President. We're trying to make sure national security is respected, and we're proud of the policy.
So that was really stupid. No one in the press would object to any of that. That's all regular stuff. No one cares about wearing a badge. That's fine. Hegseth actually tightened up where the press could go in the Pentagon back in May. No one cared. None of that is interacting with reality in any way, shape, or form. So, in summary, while I can't get my hands on the old conditions, and I've tried very hard, I find it hard to believe that new conditions, as amended, are any different from the old ones. It seems pretty standard stuff to me. I think what's happened is Hegseth has gotten the press offside with a ridiculous demand to vet all articles written about defence. The press threw a fit. He backed down. For whatever reason, they decided to keep on throwing a fit anyway. Maybe they didn't notice his concession. It's possible. I don't think so, but it's possible. Maybe they don't care. Maybe they just decided to act like Hegseth was still saying the same thing because they don't trust him anymore. They don't trust the administration, and they think that all these cover your ass, it's possible we could revoke your press pass type statements, which presumably are always there.
Yeah.
Maybe they think this time the Pentagon might actually use them, and they don't want to stick around long enough to find out. Maybe they think they get nothing from the Pentagon officially anyway because Hegseth hasn't briefed Pentagon reporters in 4 months, and his press secretary hasn't briefed reporters in 2 months. And so they thought, what's the point? We're just getting leaks from people anyway. We're not getting them in the Pentagon. We're getting them through other sources, other means. Yeah, exactly. Getting through Signal, exactly. So maybe the press thought, it's time to go unofficial completely. I don't know. I'm trying to mind read there. I don't know what's going on. But here's the important thing. I think Hegseth didn't want to look like he was backing down because he's a child. So he never corrected them. He never said, hang on, guys. When you say that we're doing this, when we're doing X, we changed our mind because you complained. And so we backed down, guys. We backed down. You won. We gave you what you wanted. He didn't say that because he wanted to be a tough guy. He wanted to just talk shit like he did then in that clip I played before. So we've got basically a journalist strike based on what is largely a fiction here, which neither side wants to correct. The press and Hegseth are happy to say the press refused to sign on to these new conditions, even though the reality is they're almost identical to the old conditions. And every time some MSM outlet said we can't abide by these conditions, Hegseth would then reply with not a clarification of their misunderstanding or a defence. No, he'd just retweet their statement and reply with an emoji, waving them goodbye, because that's Hegseth's maturity level. This is him waving goodbye to the Washington Post. This is him waving goodbye to the Atlantic. This is him waving goodbye to the New York Times. And pretty soon, he's waving goodbye to the entire press. ABC, CNN, CBC, NBC, sure. But also, as you say, Jared, Fox News, Newsmax, The Daily Caller, The Washington Examiner. In the end, only 15 people, not outlets, people, signed an acknowledgement of the new guidelines. Some outlets had multiple people. So it was less than 15 outlets. There was one guy from the Federalist, one from the Epoch Times, 2 from the cable network One American News. The rest of the signers were either tiny independent social media-based people or foreign outlets. In particular, a bunch of Turkish journos seemed to have no dramas. And one reporter from The Australian who, after the Washington Post publicly reported that The Australian had signed the new form, then they changed their mind and took back their signature, saying they raise serious concerns and place undue limits on press freedoms. That's the only group more pathetic than Pete Hegseth in this story, I feel. But anyway, so am I saying I would have signed the form? I don't know. To be honest. I'd want to go over in granular detail the differences between the September form, between the original form and the October form. I'm speaking from a position of ignorance. I don't have a copy of that precise wording. But what I do know is that the critique that news outlets keep offering publicly is not true, and they do not give you the full story. So, Jared, I've had my little rant. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is, again, another instance of, I think, the media not being fully transparent at their own peril. And sometimes there's a conclusion that if you talk to people, that's why I asked you if you had emailed any reporter on this, because I would love to hear them on the record clarify exactly what happened. And I imagine what they would tell you off the record would be different. What I just can't understand is the Fox News rationale for this. That is my biggest question.
Well, Newsmax in particular,
and Newsmax,
like Fox
even more
News.
so.
Fox News, their journalists are real journalists.
I stand corrected.
Yeah.
You are completely right. The Fox News defense journalist, who actually got called out by Hegseth not too long ago, she's been doing it for decades and she's well respected. But Newsmax.
Yeah.
What do you have to lose from that?
Yeah.
And what was the rationale? And also, I want to know who's leading the Pentagon Press Association, because I know the White House Press Association often takes the personality of whoever's leading it, and it's like a rotating chair. I don't know enough about the Pentagon Press Association, but it doesn't stack up. I feel like there's a story here that has not been fully released, and that's frustrating.
Yeah,
because this plays into the whole Trump hates the media, despite the fact that in many ways he's more accessible than any other president in recent history to the media. He gives more media press conferences and just like access than practically anyone that I can think of in modern history.
I must say, part of the reason as well I'm kind of a bit hot to try on this story is because I'm a bit scared, to be perfectly honest. I'm a bit scared that as I was doing this, I was just thinking, is this the future? Like, is this going to be every story in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, where as the media gradually becomes increasingly disarmed and increasingly amateur and increasingly poorly resourced and more a bunch of bloggers than a bunch of reporters? Is that we're just going to find every second story unreported, and people are going to have to go around spending hours hunting through scraps to try and work out the story? Is this the beginning of the future of trying to work out the news? Because I can do that shit because this is my job. I have all the time in the world to be doing this stuff. You don't. Well, I say you do. I mean the Peppers. The Peppers don't. They got real jobs. Is this where we're heading? And it scares the shit out of me, to be honest, because I think it is where we're heading.
Yeah.
A little aside as well, bit of an irony here, that Hegseth trying to crack down on the media in any capacity, even if he backed away from it, is deeply ironic because the biggest security breach
is him.
Yeah, that's right. What's he doing?
And his deep insecurities were needing to clarify OPSEC in the Signal chat.
Yeah. Can I also say, I suspect that Hegseth, and this is probably part of it as well for Hegseth, he's loving this. He's loving all the press disappearing from the Pentagon because he hates them. This is not a Trump thing. Like people, before they start going, oh, Trump.
This is pure Hegseth.
This is pure Hegseth, exactly. This is 100% pure proof Hegseth, much like his bloodstream. When Trump was first asked about the change in conditions back in September, he wanted nothing to do with them.
Yeah.
This was his answer to the question, should the Pentagon be part of deciding what reporters can report on?
Should the Pentagon be in charge of deciding what reporters can report on?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Are you okay with them limiting that?
Nothing stops reporters.
Have you been
Exactly what I was saying.
Yeah.
It's not very Trumpian whatsoever to limit access to media.
And even now he's still offering fairly muted support. So yeah, it's just Hegseth.
And also we should note that Trump regularly gets asked about Hegseth. And he has already said that Hegseth is has learned and is improving, and Hegseth has already leaked that he's looking potentially to run for office, so he has an escape hatch if need be. I believe in Tennessee, potentially, even though he's from Minnesota. So it is well known that Hegseth is maybe not running the tightest of ships.
Yeah. One other thing, I suspect if the whole press disappeared and left his biggest supplicants behind, Hegseth would be thrilled by that. He banned several news outlets from workspaces before. I already said in May he restricted heavily where reporters could go in the Pentagon. And he never briefs them. He's press secretary whose job it is. I don't know what they're doing. They never brief them.
He doesn't give. I think Sean Parnell is the press secretary. He doesn't actually do briefings, but he is like a rapid response,
social media. They're all over social media. Yeah, the Defense Department, completely on social media, where they control the message.
Yeah,
and if you want to know where this is going, the White House, even though what Hegseth's been doing is not Trump. Trump's been doing his own thing. They've basically been steadily replacing the press with sycophants. When you watch whole presses these days, which I do, about a quarter to a third of the questions are coming from lick spittles now. It's quite ominous, to be frank. And every now and then it becomes really clear. This is a moment. I play this on Planet America. I want you guys to hear it as well, though. This is a bit of a moment from a few weeks back. They were talking about Columbus Day, because in America they don't call it Columbus Day anymore. They call it Indigenous Peoples Day.
The Biden administration changed that.
Yeah, and then Trump's changed it back to Columbus Day, of course. At one point in time, I think he said, "Italians, we're back." On behalf of all Italians, let me say thanks. But anyway, I just want to play a bit from this presser.
In other words, we're calling it Columbus Day.
Yes.
That was the press that broke out in applause. Can you believe that? I've never seen that happen before.
It was the press that broke out in applause, and it was the press that gave him a hearty laugh. It was the press rubbing his belly and patting him on the head, and that is another example right there of how you don't miss the media until they're gone.
I mean, also, let's not forget the Zelensky Oval Office issue where it was the boyfriend of Marjorie Taylor Greene that was criticizing Zelensky's attire, right? That's where it's one thing for the press. They go out of their way, and they have gone out of their way for some time to provide questions to presidents that are contentious, right? You saw, I loved watching the press release, the news conference with Prime Minister Starmer and Trump when Trump did the state visit, and they went out of their way to ask questions that would have allowed Trump to just stomp all over Starmer, and Trump didn't. And it was really enlightening. That's normal, right, for those sort of questions. But for the way that Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend actually got involved in sort of fueling the tension in the room, that's different.
Yeah. While we're talking about the media, Jared, you want to talk about the state of American media? I hope it's better than what I just presented.
It's awesome.
Tell us about it, Jared.
So there's a few polling entities out there that beyond myself that like to ask.
I hope they're all getting abused.
That like to ask some interesting questions. One that I really like to check, or two that I check out regularly, are Pew and Gallup.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to ask questions that you just put out into the field and say, hey, what do you think about this? It's another thing to ask them for decades. That's what I like about Pew and Gallup, is that unlike my small think tank, they have operated for decades and have the funding to keep going for decades. We can do a whole other sidebar tangent on how they have that, but it's interesting the way that they're able to basically track items across decades. And so Gallup came out just this month with a poll about the trust in media in the U.S., and I know this is going to really shock you, but they've reached a new low of 28% in the United States.
I'm astonished.
And it's unbelievable how that's 28% that express a great deal or fair amount of trust in newspapers, television, and radio to report the news fully.
Yeah.
Right? It's not just report the news fully, accurately, and fairly. And it's down from 31% last year. And any guess what the Republican confidence is?
I'm going to say it's in the single digits now. I'm going 9.
So close, 8.
Oh, I could taste it.
But what I also love, and especially as my mom is quite a news junkie, and she consumes quite a lot, and she also consumes it differently than me. and she watches a lot more of the sort of standard news programs than I do. And the ads that she gets on her programs, let's just say they're not targeted for my demographic.
Sure. Let's.
And this is what I found particularly interesting, is how the trust in the media by age is also very different.
Yeah.
So those aged 30 to 49 have about 23% have a great deal or fair amount of trust in the media.
23, yep.
23% of those aged 30 to 49. Those aged 65 and above, 43%.
That makes sense.
That I found but really interesting. But with that said, all of the demographics are decreasing still.
Yeah.
Even those 65 and above. In 2001 to 2003, it was 65% for those who were in that old demographic. Now it's down to 43. But the decline for those aged 30 to 49, it went from 53% now down to 23%.
Yep.
So it's decreasing faster for the younger. And
that makes sense to me.
Yeah. And I find the challenge, though, is what is it being replaced with? And that is where I'm not seeing a lot of optimism. And what I'm seeing now more and more is my conservative friends endlessly criticizing the mass media, but they don't appreciate enough just how inconsequential they are. And younger generations are actually they're losing trust in the media, but also our mainstream media outlets are in my view declining in quality with no one really caring. And I saw this in particular. I have to give a shout out to a great writer named Jim Fallows. So he wrote for The Atlantic. He has a Substack. He loves airplanes. Gotta love any man who loves airplanes like myself. He flies. He's flown all over the country. He also is a great writer on China, and he was a speechwriter for Jimmy Carter. He highlighted this, and this is there's a lot of news right now about news. CBS News now is being run by the Free Press's Bari Weiss, right? And there's a lot of controversy about that, about how she has never run a news outlet before that is based on reporting. She's only run an opinion and analytical outlet. But one thing that I find fascinating is what's happening at the Washington Post. They are hemorrhaging staff right now, left and right, and it's actually made other outlets really good. Have the sort of Wall Street Journal and New York Times, their Washington coverage has actually improved significantly because they've had an exodus of Washington Post journalists. Now, this is what's really interesting is we've all heard about how Jeff Bezos has changed the sort of editorial line.
Oh yeah, he sure has.
Of the Washington Post, and now they are used clips of their editorials are used relentlessly against Democrats, against anything left wing. Now, but what I find really fascinating, and there was no sort of backlash against this whatsoever, is the fact that it is obvious now that many of these editorials are not being written by Americans. There is an editorial from the Washington Post just released a few days ago. They say the most likely next prime minister in Japan, they're talking about complicated legislative math, and then they start a new paragraph. The American should be pleased regardless of who gets the top job. No American writes like that. And I'm so glad Jim Fallows pointed this out. They are letting Brits write the Washington Post editorials. And they're wondering why trust is decreasing so quickly for all ages.
Yeah, because the news director, the new news director at Washington Post is British, aren't they?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And yes, we are seeing less stories about the Washington Post. I guess some of the less obedient reporters have left, or the more obedient ones are now leaking less than they were before. But no native American speaker or native speaker of American English would ever say the American should be pleased.
Yeah.
That is not American English. That is 100% British English, and it is now coming into Washington Post editorials, and it is now, in my view, compounding my distrust of American media.
We should find a way. I don't know how we can do this. We should find a way to make the Washington Post editorial writer use the phrase, "I couldn't care less."
Is that an Americanism?
Well, Americans say, "I could care less." That's how you can tell the difference between American and someone who's not from America. Because when you're saying that you don't care about something, from everywhere around the world, they use the logical form of that, which is, I could not care less. I don't care about that. So I could not care less about that. But for reasons I don't understand, Americans, and maybe you can explain this to me, always write, "I could care less," which makes no sense. I have no idea why Americans do that, but they do. And it's the ultimate tell whether you're dealing with an American or not.
To be honest, I say I couldn't care less.
It's because you've been in Australia for a while.
Perhaps, yeah. It's you foreigners ruining everything for me. Can I have one bugbear that I really get angry about? I don't even know if this is American English. The word sanction. Yeah. The worst word. Because when you say you sanction something, it can mean two of the opposite things.
Yes, that's true.
That is so frustrating.
There's a word for that. There is actually, that's not the only one. There's a whole bunch of these words. I mean, I didn't prepare for this for obvious reasons, so I don't remember the word off the top of my head. But if you look it up, Lockie, can you try and look it up? A word that has two meanings that are the opposite of each other?
A contronym.
A contronym.
Excellent. Thank you.
Can you look up contronyms, please, Lockie? Just to read out a few examples, because it's not the only one. There's a bunch of them.
In my world of policy, when we talk about sanctions and someone's sanctioning something, I read that. I'm like, "You're sanctioning. I have no idea what you mean."
Yes.
It's almost as good as, sometimes this is not a contronym, but they'll say, like, in terms of whether something's on the record or not, sometimes people will just, I've seen this one time in a work, when I worked at the Council on Foreign Relations, not my boss, but a different colleague said, in regards to the media, they said, "Oh, this meeting will be OOO." And I was like, is that on the record or off the record? Because they both work. It's useless to use an acronym in this instance.
Yeah, that's weird.
And so, again, sanctioning, OOO, all of this angers me.
OOO meant hugs.
Would you like some more contronyms?
Please, Lucky.
I like this one, fast, which can mean holding fast, set in one place, or can mean moving very quickly, fast.
That's true.
It's a good contronym.
That's true, yes.
Off, the alarm was turned off. The alarm was going off.
Yep.
Yes, that's good.
Point.
That's good.
Original can mean authentic and traditional, or it can mean it's never been done before.
That's true.
Very good.
The amazing world of contronyms. Maybe that's your new nickname, the contronym.
I still think sanction is like, just we sanction them.
No, I understand. You're right.
Is so, like, the alarm went off. We all know what that means.
There's a sanction is on the list.
Yeah, there's a contextual word with off, whereas there isn't a contextual word with sanction.
There's nothing.
I understand totally what you're saying. Can I just say, I still think the worst word in the world is moist for different reasons entirely.
Everyone says that.
But anyway, it's a horrible word.
That's original.
Hey, isn't he good?
Very good. We should actually do a poll. Next YouGov poll, I'll ask, what is the worst word? And I bet, I'm not even joking, anecdotally, everyone says moist. Not a swear word. What is a safer for work word?
Yeah.
What do you hate the most? And I'm not even joking. I think a plurality of Americans and Australians would say it's moist.
I think you're right. Yes. Anyway, I was going to say before, I just said before, yeah, that makes sense to me. I never said why, because I was letting you go with the flow. The reason why I think younger people, like, X's and millennials, would be would be losing more faith in the media than old people is because old people are still watching cable news, which has I can't believe I'm saying this, but it has some standards compared to the internet.
Oh yeah, no, that sounds surprising.
Yeah, younger people, like they'd be associating the news with the internet, where there's just zero standards, and so I can understand that. I just gonna say one thing: it makes me really sad when I see. Just a little aside. It makes me sad when I see the hostility towards the media from the right. Because, like, surely we can all agree that we need a news media. Like, all their stories come from the outlets that they hate. Like, they read and consume media coverage of those stories. Like, Fox is reporting is passing on what the New York Times said and then putting their spin on it, or the Washington Post or the Wall Street Journal or whatever. But they're still originally coming from the outlets that these people hate and don't trust. And you go, what happens when you take those outlets away? Then there's no news for anyone, including you, including your precious outlets. They don't exist anymore. It just becomes opinion about tweets. It becomes news.com. Oh my God. It becomes, my kitchen rules. Wasn't that awful last night? Like, that's what the news is then. Like, it's just so depressing. Can't they see that coming? It's coming so fast now. I can't believe people can't see it advancing over the hill right in our face, you know?
Can I just say, as someone that has to engage with the legacy media, and the difference between when me or colleagues say something in the New York Times versus when a MAGA influencer says something about us, the difference in the hate mail we get, we don't get anything if someone says something in the New York Times, like Donald Trump is unpopular. But if a MAGA, let's say, member of parliament says something about us, they're in their little echo chamber so strong that we just get bombarded with a lot more hate mail.
I get plenty from the ABC.
But it's really, to me, it's fascinating that you would think that the New York Times would appearing there, but no, they don't even bother reading the New York Times anymore.
Yeah. I also find really depressing the phrase, and this is a phrase, I didn't prepare this, so I don't have it ready, but there's a phrase I read more than any other phrase from the conservative media, which is, you don't hate the media enough. That's the phrase they all say. The look you're giving me, it looks like you haven't seen that before, which means you don't read much conservative media, because they all say it all the time. I must read that phrase maybe 10 times a day. You don't hate, however much you hate the media, you don't hate them enough. They just say over and over again. They drill it into their brains, into each other's brains.
Maybe I don't even notice it, but all my conservative friends say that, but I don't. I don't think I read that.
I'm sure they all say it because they all read it, and sometimes some publications even put it in bold, in bigger font, in all caps. Like it's a real catchphrase for them, and that constantly talk about the damage being done by loose rhetoric and spreading hatred and stuff. They can't see the damage they do. Like, I get the critiques. I mean, God, listen to me. I'm always going about the media. Yeah. Like, I agree with a lot of the critiques. Yeah. I read their critiques and go, yes. But the answer is to improve it.
Yeah.
It's not just to destroy the entire system. Like, it makes me very depressed. Anyway, is that we talked about enough media?
I just wanted to share the poll and
it was good.
Talk about how frustrating it is that no one's angry about non-Americans writing Washington Post editorials.
That's a great pickup. I'm going to give you a quick. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do. I haven't had one of these for ages, but this one's a beauty. Here we go. According to the World Bank, in 2008, the EU had the GDP of $16.3 trillion, and US had a GDP of $14.7 trillion.
I know this stat.
You know this one?
Mm-hmm.
You know where this is going?
Yep.
That's no fun. That's all right. By 2023, the EU GDP had grown by 14% to $16.3 trillion. Wow. Let's see how good your memory is, Jared. What percentage has the US GDP grown by during the same period, in that 15-year period that the EU GDP grew by 14%?
200?
No.
100?
That's a bit crazy.
Oh, man. I had this. It was 100.
You're probably thinking of the percentage plus 100, as in It is now 187% of what it was.
Thank you.
It's grown by 87%.
That's it.
To $27.7 trillion. So while the EU GDP has grown by 14%, the US GDP has grown by 87%. In the same period that the US is all whinging about how there's been no growth and this is the reason for MAGA and all the rest of it, like how bad the economy's been going for ages. 87% in the time that the EU has grown by 14%. Accounting for population, though, it's a bit closer because the EU's population's been shrinking, whereas Americans have been going up. The EU GDP per capita as a percentage of US GDP per capita has fallen from 76.5% of US GDP per capita in 2008 to 50% in 2023. So it's fallen, but not by quite as much.
There's been a lot of consternation in Europe about their lack of dynamism and economic growth. And Mario Draghi wrote a whole report on European competitiveness. And so the tagline, I don't think it's as relevant now, but still just a few years ago was America innovates, China replicates, and Europe regulates. And I think that concept of the overregulated Europe is still something that no one has really had much of an answer for.
Okay, well, seeing as you knew that one, I got another one for you.
I got the number wrong, so and you love it.
It's close enough. You're not going to know this one. The tiny nation of Anguilla has a population of 15,000. But Anguilla just came to some very good fortune. Do you know what that fortune is?
No.
I'll give you a clue. Can you guess what Anguilla's internet domain code is?
AN?
.ai.
No. Oh, how did I not get that?
Domain name registrations have risen in Anguilla from 48,000 in 2018 to 870,000 so far this year. I'm about to show you a graph. Don't put it up yet. Don't put it up yet, Lockie. I'm about to show you a graph where I show you how the percentage of state revenues have changed over the years. The percentage of state revenues that are attributed to solely domain registrations. Wow. What percentage of Anguilla's economy do you feel is now supported by domain registrations?
20%.
You would have been right 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, when it was 22%. But now it's almost 50% of the economy, of the revenue, is from domain registrations.
Wow. I did not know that.
How cool is that? .ai. Good luck to them. Good luck to those kids.
It's really sad in the Caribbean how dependent the islands are for the tourism, and they have just not been able to diversify very much at all.
Well, there's another way. By the way, that nearly 50%, that's only so far this year.
Yeah.
It's going to be more at the end of the year. All right, so I want to talk the shutdown. Let's talk the shutdown.
Why not?
Why not? We're in the middle of one. I've got a few thoughts here, but broadly. But I'll start off, and then you jump in whenever you want. And if you don't jump in, I'll cue you up every now and then. All right. Where we left you last week on both Planet America and on PEP was that this week was going to be critical because the first paychecks were going to not be sent out. In particular, the military was not going to be paid, and that's a big deal. Because that would have been the first time in recent history that active duty military service members would miss a paycheck on a large scale during a shutdown. That's not popular, Jared. The military defending the country with no pay. A bunch of military spouses were about to go public with how this was going to hurt their families. It was going to be a big deal. The Democrats had proposed a bill to allow the military to get paid, and they were daring Republicans to not vote for it. Recall, Michael Johnson hadn't even recalled the House from their long holiday yet. They've been on holiday for 3 weeks. And Democrats were really amping up the pressure.
Republicans love to advocate for more work requirements for poor people, people on SNAP, people on Medicaid. Well, I got an idea. Let's have a work requirement for Republicans to show up to Congress and do your goddamn job. I mean, millions of people are about to lose their health care. This is a serious crisis we're in, and we can avoid it. We can avoid people losing their health care, and we can keep the government open. They need to show up.
And Marjorie Taylor Greene was piling on as well. She told Axios, the new Marjorie Taylor Greene, she told Axios on Monday, the House has so much work to do. Why aren't we coming back in session? We could be doing appropriations, we could be passing important bills and more. And that's a great point. Even if they don't end the shutdown, the House could actually be passing bills. It's not like there's nothing they could be doing. They're still getting paid right now while they're on holiday. They're the only ones. And
that's the way the funding works, is that they get paid no matter what.
Yeah, totally.
It's not something that some sweetheart deal that this Congress has.
No, that's the Constitution.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
That's not even legislation. That's the Constitution.
Yeah.
And they were doing nothing even before the shutdown, Jared. Since July 3, the House has been in session for guess how many days? 20. I wish it was 2. No, 20 days. Marjorie Taylor Greene, that's 4 months. Marjorie Taylor Greene almost made this excellent point that Democrats have made many, many times as well.
I see the shutdown completely different from maybe my party leadership. And I'm not putting the blame on the president. I'm actually putting the blame on the speaker and Leader Thune in the Senate. This should not be happening.
But so you're putting the blame on the leadership of your party?
Absolutely. We control the House. We control the Senate. We have the White House. I've been vocal saying, you can use the nuclear option in the Senate. This doesn't have to be a shutdown.
Actually, I misremembered it. She didn't almost make it. She made it. That's the point. The nuclear option. She's right. Republicans in the Senate only need 51 votes to end the shutdown. They can ignore the filibuster like they've done twice this year already and just end the shutdown tomorrow if they want. This shutdown is their choice as much as it's the Democrats' choice. It's both their choices, right? But bringing the House back would have pressured Johnson to negotiate with Democrats a bit more. He didn't want to do that. He wanted to pressure the Senate Democrats to cave, not to negotiate. On the Republicans' private conference call, a number of House Republicans were demanding Johnson bring the House back into session. They hated this tactic, but Johnson decided to lump it. He did not call the House Republicans back. He opted for them to take a third straight week off. Interesting decision. And he decided to allow the military to not be paid. But then Trump came over the top.
As he always does.
He truthed out. I am using my authority as Commander-in-Chief to direct our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, to use all available funds to get our troops paid on October 15th. We have identified funds to do this. Secretary Hegseth will use them to pay our troops. I will not allow the Democrats to hold our military and the entire security of our nation hostage with their dangerous government shutdown. The radical left Democrats should open the government, and then we can work together to address healthcare and many other things they want to destroy. Thank you for attention to this matter. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America. Drink. He didn't say where the money was coming from.
Exactly. No one has said yes.
No. Well, the Pentagon said they found $8 billion worth of unobligated research, development, testing, and evaluation funds. Whatever that means.
Exactly.
I don't know what that means. Just to be clear, though, regardless of what it means, Jared, one thing doesn't change. That is against the law. 100% against the law. The Anti-Deficiency Act prevents federal agencies from spending money that Congress hasn't appropriated for their specific purposes. You can't just take money from one program and spend it on another program if Congress didn't give you permission to do that. You can't do it. Trump tried to get around that with a memo. He put out National Security Presidential Memorandum number 8. And that said, as the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the United States, under Article 2 of the United States Constitution, I direct the Secretary of War, in coordination with the Director of the Office of Management and Budget, to use for the purpose of pay and allowances any funds appropriated by the Congress that remain available for expenditure in fiscal year 2026 to accomplish the scheduled disbursement of military pay and allowances for active duty military personnel, as well as for reserve component military personnel who have performed active service during the relevant pay period. Funds used for military pay and allowances during the current lapse should be those that the Secretary of War determines are provided for purposes that have a reasonable logical relationship to the pay and allowances of military personnel, consistent with applicable law including Section 1301A. Now, that all sounds wonderful to me, Jared. There is a presidential memo going, hey, this is legal. Great. Except that law, he says, this needs to be consistent with Section 1301A says, and I quote, appropriations shall be applied only to the objects for which the appropriations were made, except as otherwise provided by law. In other words, the memo says the funding of the troops needs to be consistent with a law that says the president can't just fund the troops. His memo does nothing at all legally. It's just Dr. Seuss. But what are the Democrats going to do about this? Who's going to step up and sue Trump for paying the troops? Nobody. Zero, Jared. As Mike Johnson said, because he's a interesting fellow. If the Democrats want to go into court and challenge troops being paid, bring it. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for your services to the law. So this law is never going to be enforced.
Nope.
And Trump has found a way to short-circuit shutdowns.
So the question is, when does he use it for?
And what for?
Less politically palatable things than paying troops.
That's right. It's actually, let's give him credit. Oh, whoever, Russell Vogt, presumably wasn't from Trump. It's very clever from a short-term political perspective.
Yeah.
Here's the problem, though, Jared. You raised a great question. I'm going to ask the question after that. I'm not even going to answer your question. I don't know. We'll find out. But I'm going to take the next step. Oh, I can tell you, by the way, ICE and Border Patrol have already been informed they're going to get paid through the shenanigans as well. Okay. So that's the answer to your question, actually. ICE and Border Patrol. So it's already happened. Yeah. In fact, border agents may receive accelerated pay. Isn't that nice for the next paycheck? And OMB is working on ways to pay federal law enforcement officers as well, apparently. And the White House is saying they'll directly use hundreds of millions of dollars in tariff revenue to fund the supplemental nutrition program for women's, infants, and children for the next little while, which is, practically speaking, good news.
Yeah.
That program serves 6 million needy people, 40% of America's infants. It's a good program.
SNAP.
Yeah. No, that's not SNAP. That's
Snack.
Oh, snack. Sorry. Okay.
Not SNAP.
Oh, yeah, no, SNAP. Snack. Good. Yes.
SNAC.
Yeah, gotcha. Yes. Thank you. Yes. As one House Democrat said, I'd say it's a good thing we're helping poor people who are facing food prices, and it's good that we're paying the troops. Yeah, thanks. But here's my question after your question. Everything that might create pain in the shutdown is being avoided by deft and illegal financial handiwork by the White House. So why would anyone negotiate with anyone else?
Yeah,
That's my question.
There's no incentive to.
It's a pain-free shutdown now.
Exactly.
You look like a wuss if you cave under these circumstances.
The number one deadline everyone's talking about is Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Because that's when Americans travel to see family. So we have, it looks like we're going to eclipse the last shutdown by going until late November.
That's another month away.
Exactly.
Yeah. So this could go on and on. In the future shutdown, this could go for 6 months.
And we should clarify why that matters is because the federal agencies, the FAA and everyone, they're not being paid while they're working.
Yeah.
And so that's where Americans are going to feel the pain.
Well, they're not paid until now.
Exactly.
Maybe they're about to be paid.
Exactly. Piecemeal.
In 2019, the previous record holder actually ended because of the airports, because they weren't getting paid. They could barely function. So maybe they'll find a way around that now. Congress's greatest check on power, the thing that forces the president to respect Congress, is its control of the purse. Trump has now taken that away.
Yep.
Well, to be honest, Elon Musk took that away, and Trump just moved on with it.
Or Supreme Court, there's a lot of...
The Supreme Court let him get away with it. So really, the Supreme Court... Yeah, well, you're right. The Supreme Court has let him get away with it several times now. And so we're now reaping what Musk, Trump, and the Supreme Court sowed, that the Constitution is broken when it comes to spending power.
Yeah.
Wonderful. This, by the way, is why the tariffs case is so important, because if the Supreme Court allows Trump to just unilaterally raise as much money as he likes without Congress's permission through tariffs, and they also allow him to spend whatever he likes, then why does Congress even exist? Just get rid of Congress. They've got no role whatsoever. It could be a real long time before the shutdown ends if it goes through Thanksgiving, depending on how long Trump can illegally shuffle money around. So do you have any thoughts?
No, this is what really fascinates me is how we are now in the last half hour of a 3-hour podcast, and we are only now talking about the shutdown. This, as you said, it's pain-free. It is not leading any of the major news outlets right now. Even the fact, just seeing what you just showed, where they showed it was day 8. I don't see anyone having a ticker at the bottom showing the day counter, right?
Yeah.
No one's really feeling this. And I think you and Dr. Dave, I think, appropriately talked about how no one really pays a electoral consequence of these shutdowns. But I will tell you, as someone who lived in D.C. and have friends in the federal government, the number one casualty of this is expertise in the federal government and willingness of people to work for the federal government. You cannot raise a family with this behavior.
Yeah.
If you are not deemed to be essential, it's just the number. It's catastrophic for families living paycheck to paycheck. The number of people I know who had to go to food banks because of the last shutdown for 35 days. It's shocking. These are white-collar jobs. But if you miss 2 paychecks in a row, that can be pretty catastrophic for a number of families, especially single-income families, right? So I think in my view, the number one damage of this is not immediate whatsoever. It is long-term death of expertise in government. And there's been extensive research into this about why this is terrible in so many different ways. There's one book in particular that I really like by Michael Lewis. Have you covered this book in PEP yet?
I don't know. What's the book?
So
is the Fifth Risk?
His most recent book that's called Who is Government? The Untold Story of Public Service.
We have not mentioned that before. Onto the book list. Sucked in, Dave. You've been usurped.
I highly recommend it to folks. Michael Lewis, as we all know, wrote Moneyball and so many other excellent books that have been made into movies. And he really he just did deep dives into talking to members of the public service. And he, for example, found out how there's so many different things that we found out from the public service. And one was basically how the public service was uniquely capable, government employees, of being able to track where fat Americans will be found if they fall off of a cruise ship.
What's the answer to this question, Jared?
Well,
that's a stats nugget.
Yeah, there's no. Basically, they were able to do the tracking technology to figure out that because you're fat, you have more buoyancy and you float better. And so it really is generally older Americans, quite overweight, and they were able to save lives because they had tracked this so exceptionally well. And there's one guy in particular that had just crunched the numbers on finding, as soon as these cruise liners would lose someone off their boat, they'd basically get their basic height and weight, and then be able to figure out pretty accurately where they would be found.
Extraordinary.
So that's a bit of a tangent, but it really is the people who work in the public service are not deep state. I know it is often a well-known sort of trope that these people are removed from reality, but these are patriotic Americans, many of whom truly could be making more money if they worked in the private sector. I know for a very close friend of mine works in the Treasury Department, and I know for a fact that he could make a lot more money if he worked in the tech world. And he wants to work in government because he believes in what he's doing. And it's just, that is the number one frustration in all of this, is that this is not a top news item. This is not something that's anyone's going to be paying for electorally or politically, but we're going to see worse government functionality.
Yeah, no, it's a huge issue about just how badly the public sector has been treated this year. And this is only one more example. I mean, we even mentioned the layoffs. Like that's part of it as well. Just the lack of job security. I mean, until this week, Trump was playing nice because Thune and Johnson were telling him to, and he was happy to not create a nightmare of publicity by sacking people unnecessarily. Oh, by the way, on polls, I just flicked past this. The polls just, and there's another reason that it's going to go forever. They haven't budged. No. Like AP and ORC, 58% say Trump and Republicans have a great deal or quite a bit of responsibility for the shutdown. 54% say Democrats do as well. Like they're blaming everyone. In the generic ballot, Democrats had a 3.1 point lead generically in the House at the start of the shutdown. After day 17, 2.7 point lead. It's gone nowhere. So there's no incentive for people to change their mind. Anyway, but back to layoffs. Trump, at the end of this week, he started to use layoffs as a political weapon.
And we'll be making cuts that will be permanent. And we're only going to cut Democrat programs. I hate to tell you. I guess that makes sense. But we're only cutting Democrat programs. But we're going to start that. And we have Russell. We can talk to you about it if he wants to. But we'll be cutting some very popular Democrat programs that aren't popular with Republicans, frankly, because that's the way it works. They wanted to do this. So we'll give them a little taste of their own medicine.
Just a reminder, by the way, Trump was impeached the first time round because he did exactly that, trying to cut appropriated spending for untoward reasons. In that case, it was Ukrainian defensive weapons spending. You can't do it. But look, he wasn't kidding. This is from the New York Times. 2 weeks into the shutdown, have a look at this graph. 2 weeks into the shutdown, the Trump administration has frozen or cancelled nearly $28 billion for 200 projects in 87 districts, compared to less than $1 billion in 14 Republican districts so far. And Russell Vought, OMB chief, this week tweeted out, "The rifts have begun." RIFs refers to reduction in forces or sackings. 1,400 employees at the IRS were first to be cut. About 4,100 workers in total were cut from commerce, education, energy, health, housing, homeland security, treasury departments. Amongst them, 1,300 were sacked from the CDC. They included like measles outbreak people, Ebola outbreak people. They realised they'd stuffed up. They rehired 700 of those 1,300 people again. All very sensible stuff that the employees would appreciate, undoubtedly. They also eliminated the Office of Special Education. Seems like something that would be useful, special education, but apparently not. Russell Vought has predicted that about 10,000 workers could be sacked during the shutdown, which isn't a huge number in the scheme of things, but it's still completely unnecessary and, importantly, illegal. This is what Russell Vought had to say about the rifts to come.
If there's an opportunity to have less bureaucracy, and think of Green New Deal programs at the Department of Energy, think the Minority Business Development Agency at Commerce that divvies up business grants on the basis of race, think environmental justice at EPA, think about CISA. CISA was an area that we riffed, which was participating in censorship of the American people. We want to be very aggressive where we can be in shuttering the bureaucracy, not just the funding, but the bureaucracy, that we now have an opportunity to do that. And that's where we're going to be looking for our opportunities.
Having said that, you can't just click your fingers and sack public workers. There's a process you need to go through. You've got to determine whether the worker can be made redundant or shifted to another job. It takes about a month. And so no one's actually been sacked under these RIF procedures. They've just gone into the procedure. Vaught's already been taken to court as well. Judge Ilston temporarily blocked the RIF process. The judge said the evidence suggests that the Office of Management Budget and the Office of Personnel Management have taken advantage of the lapse in government spending, no kidding, in government functioning to assume that all bets are off, that the laws don't apply to them anymore, and they can impose the structures that they like on the government situation that they don't like. And I believe that the plaintiffs will demonstrate ultimately that what's been done here is both illegal and in excess of authority and is arbitrary and capricious. So no one's been sacked at the moment. But, as a little aside, some interesting tensions. As soon as Energy Secretary Chris Wright heard there were cuts, he got excited because he thought, I can cut some more renewable energy. So he came up with $22 billion of cuts to like solar energy and wind power and stuff because he hates all this renewable energy. But Vogt was pissed off because he doesn't want to do that. He wants them to be entirely partisan. He just wants to cut stuff in Democrat states. He doesn't care about whether there's solar power or wind power. If they're in a red state, he wants to leave them.
Because Texas has more wind power than any other state.
Exactly. Here's one cuts in Texas. So he only allowed $8 billion of the $22 billion to go through. The $8 billion that would hurt the Democrat states.
And 70% of the Inflation Reduction Act was geared towards Republican districts.
That's
'cause they
right.
went out of their way to Trump-proof it.
That's right. So they're at each other's throats over which inappropriate cut they want to make. And Republican senators are basically forced to defend this situation, which is hard to defend because it's just so dodgy. Which leads me to my favourite clip of the week. Poor old Senator Tim Shee, who tried to defend some of these cuts on CNN, and it did not end well.
The Department of Energy just canceled $1 billion to the Pacific Northwest Hydrogen Hub. Part of that covers your state of Montana, and your governor actually praised it when it was happening, saying it was going to create good-paying Montana jobs and boost American-made energy. They just yanked $1 billion from that. So is that taking away good-paying jobs in Montana?
Of course it is. As I said, we want the government to be open. You should be saying this to Chuck Schumer, who's closing the government down. I'm agreeing we should have the government open right now. This is an unnecessary shutdown.
Yeah,
I think that's unfortunate.
we pushed Democrats on their stance. We've had many of your colleagues on the show. But on this hub specifically, I mean, that is the Trump administration didn't have to make that decision. They decided to pull that $1 billion from your state. Do you disagree with that?
Well, I think the reality is we wouldn't be here if the government was still open. And now we're going on week 3 of a pretty unnecessary shutdown.
Well, actually, Chris Wright, the energy secretary, I asked him about that project specifically, and he said they would have done that even if the government wasn't shut down, that was months in the making even before the government shut down.
Well, it's unfortunate we're still shut down. We shouldn't be.
The problem with Tim Shee is he hasn't learned to lie yet. He needs to go to the Michael Johnson school. Mike Johnson will teach him what to do. He's still got some humanity left in him.
She's a good interviewer,
Yeah, she is.
and she's also very good in the Oval Office. Like I don't envy having to be on set and having to go to all the impromptu Oval Office meetings as well.
You know where she comes from.
Daily Caller.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
she can speak their language.
People act like she's she's on CNN. They just think she's Jim Acosta, but she ain't Jim Acosta.
No.
I wouldn't be surprised if she is actually conservative. Like she came from the South.
Yeah.
She started Daily Caller.
Yeah.
She knows their shit.
Yeah. No, and that's a very good tactic of like teeing him up like that. He was completely unprepared.
It sure was.
She's very good.
One more thing about the shutdown. Do you have anything about the shutdown before I get in there?
No, I think you got everything.
Okay, well, I want to talk about the elephant in the room. Then one more paragraph here. This is something that no one is saying, but let me be the first. You heard it here first on PEP. We're talking about a shutdown. No. Shutdowns. There's going to be more shutdowns, Jared. This is the first of many.
Of course.
The only person who's even come close to noticing this is Marjorie Taylor Greene, of all people. The continuing resolution the Republicans are trying to push goes for 7 weeks.
Yeah, no, it's short term.
We've almost had 4.
Yeah.
There are 3 weeks left after this. How are they going to pass an entire federal budget in 3 weeks? This is why Green was saying before that Congress should be back, trying to pass bits and pieces of appropriation bills. I think there's a very good chance that in 3 weeks' time, no matter what happens here, they go back into shutdown because it'll be a whole series of shutdowns because they need to pass an annual budget that has cross-party agreement on tariff levels, on ICE resources, on Medicaid cuts, on healthcare spending, and heaps more elements that neither side is going to give any ground on at all. And they have to agree on all of them for there to be a budget for the shutdowns to stop. The Democrats are going to insist. They will insist on a provision to stop Trump from unilaterally making spending decisions. I promise you they're going to insist on that. Republicans are not going to give that to them.
Yep.
This shutdown here this is the easy one.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to get harder.
Yep.
They might never pass the budget for this year. They might go all the way through to September next year. Like, there's going to be a lot of shutdowns. Like, there's going to be a lot. So, so people go, oh, when's the shutdown going to end? Don't worry about that. Worry about when the next one's going to end and when the one after that's going to end.
Yeah.
It's a concern.
Every other president has felt the heat of the shutdowns and has not wanted a shutdown. I think this administration is unique and seeing the shutdown as advantageous to them. And again, we've had a lot of shutdowns since basically the Carter administration interpreted the budget as it is, and every administration has continued along that interpretation of what constitutes a government shutdown. But the fact that we now have our first president who sees it as politically advantageous, that is the number one change. And also, he has commands such loyalty in Congress that I think he, when he wants to, can end this.
Okay, Jared, we're on the home straight here, so we're going to do one from you and then one from me, and then we're going to get out of here because there's a big night of reading ahead of me and it's 1 a.m. So, Jared, what are you going to tell us about?
All right. Well, the New York City mayoral race is live and well, and we know now that Eric Adams is out of the race entirely, so it's now a three-way.
We never knew ye.
Gonna miss him tremendously. Between Mamdani, Cuomo, and Sliwa, and I have to say, as much as I love the weirdness of Adams, I really do love Sliwa. He is something else in terms of New York City weirdness, and he lives in a small apartment with a bunch of cats. He doesn't get along with Trump super well. No. He for the debate that we just saw this week, he took off his beret. The first time I've ever seen him without a beret.
Yeah, I was surprised.
He also is someone who anyone who lives in New York probably heard, because if you ride in a taxi, you'll have heard him on New York radio. He's quite the radio personality.
He does talk back?
Sorry?
He does talk back?
Oh, yeah. And this very true, quirky New Yorker. Like, I don't think people appreciate just how weird New York is. Like, it is not normal to live your whole life in New York. Most people come to New York and then leave once they want to raise children and not have them exposed to insanity on the subway. Sure. But yeah, so we had quite the debate with quite a lot of fireworks. We got to hear. Did you watch any of the debate?
I watched bits and pieces.
Did you watch the question about marijuana?
No, I didn't.
Where we got to hear a fantastic response from Curtis.
Have you ever purchased anything in a cannabis shop? And if so, what did you buy, Mr. Mamdani?
I have. I have purchased marijuana at a legal cannabis shop.
Okay. Mr. Cuomo?
No.
Mr. Sliwa?
When I was shot 5 times, I've had Crohn's disease. I did use medical marijuana. Yes.
Okay.
I just had to show that because he is just, I don't think people appreciate enough how quirky native New Yorkers are. But long story short, Mamdani's killing it. It's not even really all that close, right? There's some polling out. If there was a 1-to-1, just Cuomo and Mamdani, maybe it's a bit close. But Mamdani is up by high double digits. Like the lowest poll that I've seen recently on this shows him ahead by 13, maybe 10, just a few weeks ago. But one just out by Fox News had Mamdani up by 24.
Okay.
He's running away with this, right? And I think there's a couple things that I just want to flag on this. If you watch that debate, and if you also watched his Fox News appearances recently, he's a very good politician.
Yeah.
I don't think so many people want to bioengineer the perfect politician in some lab. And I don't think we appreciate enough how much you just need a good candidate, right? I'm not saying I'm a fan of Mamdani. I don't think people also appreciate enough how I tried to be nonpartisan on this show. Because I will also say that Donald Trump is a very good politician, as is Barack Obama. Like, there are good politicians. And again, the question is, what makes a good politician? All three of those politicians, if I just say their name to you, but not just to you, but to the average person, I guess I'm looking to Lockie as someone who's...
No word described me better than average.
I'm so sorry. You're far above average. But if I were to say those three names to you, I bet you can give me a word association for what they believe in. Barack Obama.
Hope.
Yep. Trump. 2016 Trump.
Wall.
Yep. Mamdani.
Cheap.
Affordability. Yeah.
3 from 3.
No.
That's more than average.
But that's what I'm saying is that everyone can do it. They are good because they are good messengers. They get their word out and everyone knows what they stand for, right?
Well, that was. I mean, Lockie might play it. They're like there's that moment with Cuomo where he said, "We're an hour 20 into the debate."
Yeah,
it's the first time he mentioned the word affordability.
Yeah, exactly.
And he just cut through all the bullshit they were doing with his message.
Yeah.
On top of what they were doing.
And also, he went on Fox News. Mamdani went on Fox News, and this was one of the most eye-opening experiences in terms of seeing just how talented he is. And he gave answers about views on Gaza and Israel and Hamas. And they were clipped and shown on both Blue Sky and X endlessly. It was like a Rorschach test almost. But they showed the same clip. He's getting his message out, whether you love him or hate him.
Yeah.
It is fascinating how talented he is at getting his message out and how people know it.
Yeah.
And he's a unique talent that
No, that's a great call. I was going to also add that he's also unflappable. Like, he's impressively unflappable. Like, he just seems like nothing throws him. Like, that Fox interview was a classic example. He just was never thrown, never phased, always comfortable. It's a pleasure watching a politician who is always comfortable.
Yeah.
And that is him. Also, the other thing about him, he communicates so clearly. Not just that he's on message, but there's no arble-garble. There's no him messing around trying to find what he's trying to say for a while before he clicks into gear. No, he's sharp. Everything's sharp corners. Like, he's like a machine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he's an exceptionally talented politician. And he is doing quite well. But I also don't think we appreciate enough, just similar to Obama's winning the Illinois Senate in 2006, just how much he has benefited from terrible competition. Cuomo, really? Like, I can't emphasize enough how, as the governor, Cuomo was not very friendly to New York City. And that's outside of his personal issues. And the fact that he can't run an aspirational campaign. All he can do is run a negative campaign, which is, again, if I ask the average person, what does Cuomo stand for? I'm not Mamdani. Experience? Like, who gets jazzed about experience, right? I can tell you who gets jazzed, and that's Chicago City voters who voted the Daley family in as mayor for decades because they didn't trust anyone else. But yeah, even the way that Mamdani is interviewed by the New York Times, he is just very good. Even when they're trying to get him on stuff, he is, like you said, unflappable and confident. Now, again, going to the ultimate question, what does this mean? Is he going to be somehow the new face of the Democratic Party? Donald Trump would love him to be so. I don't think it's necessarily the way. Obviously, he can't run for president because he wasn't born in the U.S. But also, I think we need to. What I take away from it is the value of good politicians.
Yeah.
Right? And again, 2004, when the Republicans won a second term of office and they beat the Democrats by a wider margin in the presidential election against John Kerry, there was unanimous decision that basically that the Democrats needed to get like a white, rural, fairly conservative military veteran to be their 2008 candidate. Who did they go with?
Barack Obama.
Now, And then in 2012, when the Democrats just trounced Mitt Romney by a pretty sizable margin, and the GOP in their postmortem said they needed to go younger, maybe non-white immigrant candidate. Who did they go with in 2016?
Donald Trump.
Now, those are the exact opposite of what they're aspiring for in terms of the sort of like bioengineering, what people want. Maybe you should pay attention to just good politicians. Yeah. But I just have to get one small dig in. The opposition is terrible. We shouldn't forget, who did Barack Obama run against in Illinois?
Alan Keyes, wasn't it?
Why did he run against Alan Keyes?
Someone dropped out for... Someone's arrested, weren't they? It was
Jack Ryan.
Jack Ryan, yes.
Was married to Jerry Ryan.
Yes.
The actress.
Yes.
And he liked, apparently, to go to sex clubs with his wife. And so he got a nobody, Alan Keyes. Like, it was not an effective campaign. There was no chance whatsoever. Whereas Jack Ryan before then was fairly, looked pretty strong. Now, sex scandal with the Republican or with the lead opponent, Democrat who's young and charismatic drops in and has not much, doesn't have to fight that much. What is, if you watch that debate, what is Mamdani, and if you watch his messaging recently, is he coming out with new policies whatsoever? No, he's playing for time.
Yeah.
If you have a 20-plus lead over everyone else, you're not ambitious anymore.
Yeah.
You are playing for time, right? And similar to Obama, he just has to just not mess up, and he's going to win this race.
I'll tell you something very quickly about Alan Keyes. The people at home are going, why are we talking Alan Keyes? But as someone who sort of grew up on the blogosphere, he was very famous, Alan Keyes.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because of Alan Keyes. They had what they call the crazification factor, which was Alan Keyes got, I think, 23% of the vote against Barack Obama. And at the time, in the blogosphere, they were like, who is voting for Alan Keyes? Like, Alan Keyes was an absolute loon, right? There was no reason to vote for Alan Keyes for anything. And so the theory was at least 23%, the 23% who vote for Alan Keyes are going to vote for the wrong thing every time. They are just that crazy. So just never expect anyone to ever get less than 23%. So when someone gets near 23%, that's a sign that you are at rock bottom, because there's the crazification factor of 23%. And that's in tribute to Alan Keyes. That's how bad a candidate he was.
He called homosexuality selfish hedonism. Crazy that didn't fly in Illinois. Such a conservative, Republican-leaning state.
Alan Keyes. Anyway, all right. Okay, now I got, oh God, here we go. I've got about 20 minutes. All right, I'm going to do our best. There are a couple of topics I need to cover. I'm already ready for Dave's pod. I've got plenty left over here. But I want to deal with the topic that I teased last time, because I'm sick of teasing topics and then not even getting to them the podcast after. So I can get to this one this time round. I want to talk, Jared, about defining dissent and protest as terror. There's been a growing issue over the last few months, ever since Charlie Kirk got shot. It's been going into overdrive. Focus on Antifa in particular. Many have noted Antifa is not a discrete group. I'm not talking about that, because while Antifa is amorphous around the edges, there are definitely people in the middle there who consider themselves to be part of Antifa and go, yeah, okay, they're Antifa, fine, whatever. Okay, great. But the administration has been building Antifa up into a massive scare campaign generally. This is Kristi Noem, for instance.
How this network of Antifa is just as sophisticated as MS-13, as TDA, as ISIS, as Hezbollah, as Hamas, as all of them. They are just as dangerous. They have an agenda to destroy us, just like the other terrorists we've dealt with for many, many years.
That's ridiculous. ISIS. They're as dangerous as ISIS, she says. The people who beheaded people and routinely raped little girls. Antifa are just as dangerous as them. There's been a definite push from MAGA types generally to define basically all critique and protest as inciting terror. Look at this for an example. This tweet here from a regular MAGA tweeter.
It is just such a hallmark of tyrannical, autocratic, dictatorship societies that the They use the prosecutorial department as a political weapon. It is a disgrace, and every American, I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, moderate, people should be forcefully rising up against this.
They obviously cut Schumer off deliberately to remove as much context as possible, and the tweet says, Senator Chuck Schumer once again shamefully calls for violence and says people should be forcefully rising up. He knows what he's doing. He's trying to start riots. Shaming or censoring him isn't enough. Arrest him. There's another example I've got for you where some people took this grab from Premier Jayapal out of context. She's talking about unionism here. Have a look at this.
We might call this getting strike ready. I think of it as getting us strike ready or street ready. And part of that is understanding our own strength. And as we develop that strength, being able to assess our risk tolerance.
Tweet calls that a clear call to violence because she's talking about being strike ready or street ready. Obviously, she's talking about union strikes. Arizona State Rep John Gillette responded to that with, until people like this that advocate for the overthrow of the American government are tried, convicted and hanged, it will continue. Ironically, that was the way he criticised what he saw as violent rhetoric. Now, you might say, look, these are just random people being ridiculous. Why are we talking about them? But there's a lot of this out there. And sometimes the person's very official. Like, for instance, a few weeks back, Gavin Newsom went on Colbert, talked about ICE's excesses.
That's happening in the United States of America. Masked men jumping out of unmarked cars, people disappearing, no due process, no oversight, zero accountability, happening in the United States of America today. People ask, well, is authoritarianism, you're being hyperbolic? Bull, we're being hyperbolic. If you're a black and brown community, it's here in this country.
Steve Miller tweeted out that clip and he added, this language incites violence and terrorism. Newsom's rapid response guys then responded to Miller with, Stephen Miller is a fascist. And Miller responded to them with, why do you think they posted this? And the rapid response people responded with, because you're a fascist. And then the right really headed to the fainting couches about how potential assassins were being created by this kind of talk. Ridiculous. Stephen Miller himself has a real track record of calling the Biden administration fascist. Here are just four examples right there. There are more. But then Congressman Derek Van Orden jumped in with, he tweeted out about Newsom's team. At this point, this reaches the threshold of domestic terrorism. This is no longer inflammatory, it's criminal. And he cites a statute. That's Derek Van Orden, by the way, who also has referred to politicians repeatedly before as fascists. There's three examples for you right there. My point, though, is not that they're massive hypocrites, even though they are. My point is that even though there's a huge... Actually, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to do it. My point isn't even though there's a huge case of projection occurring, where people who most accuse the left of inciting violence seem to be much more of a concern themselves. I'm going to cite for you the Daily Caller that published last month, an article headed by Jeff Ingersoll, by the way, Enough is enough, I choose violence. Let me read you this article, Jared. Today, I choose violence. Literally. I know calls for violence are generally frowned upon. The issue is I simply don't care. Part of the social compact in this country, going all the way back to its founding, there are simply some things you do not do. When you do those things, well, you might just end up with a few extra knots in your head. It's all about cost, and the cost is not high enough. In some places, the cost is non-existent. We need to reinstitute a public debt for antisocial and subversive behaviour. In my opinion, some of this cost needs to be summary and ultra-violent. Is this a call for violence? Yes, explicitly. It is. So some activists takes a sign next to your table at a public debate. She gets instantly clotheslined. I don't care if police are present. Do it anyway. In fact, be wildly disproportionate. Dudes rope up your car and start vandalising it. Bros dismounting with cudgels will fix that real quick. Turn it into an instant brawl. Break bones. Force corrupt police to intervene. I want blood in the streets. We must stop clutching our principles and shouting stop. They own the legal system. That will achieve nothing. We need action. Disproportionate. Violent. Action. Pain and suffering. We need to raise the cost of obviating the social contract. Measure it in blood if necessary. Change requires pain, and you're either taking it or inflicting it.
Sounds like a ChatGPT response to be as bloodthirsty as possible for political violence.
It's extraordinary. We should, to be fair, the Daily Caller's disclaimer, we should read it out. The examples outlined in the piece refer to hypothetical instances of self-defense, not political violence or extrajudicial mob action.
Totally.
We've spoken with the author, who reiterate that is his position, and he explicitly rejects any incitement to violence.
Yep, that's what that says to me.
That's how it came across to me. Now, look, I'm not clutching my pearls about that piece just then, even though I do think that definitely belongs to what I think the problem is, which is not specific rhetoric or language, but too much hatred and not enough tolerance is what I think the problem is.
Yeah.
None of that is my main point. My main point is people are currently trying to build up First Amendment protected critiques and dissent to be incitement of violence and, in fact, terrorism in itself. That Newsom fascist stuff I played before, Steve Miller, it's pretty mild. It was pretty standard internet banter. But Steve Miller then took it to Hannity and kept on going with it. He uncorked a classic Steve Miller rant of our time. This is genuinely his reaction to being called a fascist on Twitter.
I'm sorry, you keep calling him Steve Miller, but he is Stephen Miller.
Yeah, well, you don't think he deserves a Steve?
Well, Steve Miller Band, I think, would object to being grouped with him.
Fair enough. Out of respect to the Steve Miller Band. I'm going to play this along. I can't believe I'm playing a 3-minute clip. Lucky you have to speed this up. It's going to get hectic, folks. Strap yourself in. But this is important to set this section up. This is Steve Miller, remember, Stephen Miller talking about being called a fascist on Twitter.
Well, the Democrat Party has become a party that openly aids and encourages and foments violence. You know, we all lived through the unspeakable tragedy of two nearly successful assassination attempts on President Trump. A bullet came within a centimeter of taking his life. We watched in agony and horror as a crazed left-wing terrorist murdered Charlie Kirk just while he's giving a speech, having a debate on a college campus. We watched the United Healthcare CEO get gunned down in cold blood. We saw just days ago a sniper try to take out ICE officers. And what do all of these killers and assassins have in common? They've been radicalized by Democrat Party rhetoric that describes anyone who doesn't share their warped, twisted worldview as fascists, worthy, by implication, of execution.
Stop. Just a reminder, he's talking about being called a fascist on Twitter. Continue.
They are using this language to mark people, to put a target on them. And then on top of all of that, what else do they do? When Antifa, when these left-wing terrorists attack our law enforcement, Democrat judges won't put them in jail. Democrat-led police departments refuse to arrest them. Democrat mayors and governors refuse to pursue them. So when violence is openly occurring against the targets that they have named and identified, they will not arrest the violent agitators. And that's why President Trump signed an executive order. It's called a National Security Presidential Memorandum, or NSPM. And that is when you change the formal national security policy of the country. And so President Trump issued an NSPM last week that for the first time ever establishes a national counterterrorism strategy to dismantle these radical left-wing terror groups, including but not limited to Antifa. President Trump's going to find the members, he's going to find the funders, he's going to find the violent terrorists, he's going to find everybody involved in these criminal conspiracies, and one by one, Sean, we're going to dismantle them.
Oh, we've got to. And this rhetoric, I don't care what people say. I hold people accountable for their actions, but you cannot convince me that this never-ending Nazi, fascist, racist, refrain of theirs is not impacting, especially people on the edge. I'll give you the last
It's deliberate.
Word.
Yes. I mean, so, I asked the question, it was a rhetorical question, of course, why did Gavin Newsom say Stephen Miller is a fascist? It is a message that his team is sending to all the crazies and lunatics out there. And we're not going to absolve the Democrats of responsibility anymore. There's a reason why all of these killers, all of these lunatics, all of these terrorists adopt the same language. They say they're trying to kill the fascists. They're trying to stop the fascists. This is deliberate. President Trump is saying that we as a nation are not going to tolerate anymore, and the Joint Terrorism Task Force at the FBI is going to find these terrorists, and we're going to put them behind bars, Sean.
Stephen Miller, listen to the bloody music. It's sending you a message.
Well, I was listening to music, and I think he's coming off as a joker, smoker, a midnight joker, playing his music in the sun.
Now who's confusing him with the Steve Miller Band? The thing is, we can laugh about the fact that he's so butthurt about being called a fascist on Twitter, but he's talking about a real memo here.
Yep.
Let's look at this memo. Countering Domestic Terrorism and Organised Political Violence, otherwise known as National Security Presidential Memo 7. This is a scary memo. I'm going to put this in the homework so you can read along with it, okay? Section 1 starts with a list of a few examples of what Trump considers left-wing violence, even though he counts his own attempted assassinations in the list when his first shooter had unclear politics, if any. But anyway, he writes, this political violence is not a series of isolated incidents and does not emerge organically. Oh, they're not. They're not isolated incidents. Do you have any proof? Nope. Just asserted that. Okay. So, some of those people weren't even from the left, but let's not worry about that. He goes on. Instead, it is a culmination of sophisticated, organised campaigns, he says, of targeted intimidation, radicalisation, threats and violence designed to silence opposing speech, limit political activity, change or direct political outcomes and prevent the functioning of a democratic society. So he's identified a grand conspiracy right at the top. It's all related, man. It's all related. So what do we do about these actions, Jared? Quote, a new law enforcement strategy that investigates all participants in these criminal and terroristic conspiracies, including the organised structures, networks, entities, organisations, funding sources, and predicate actions behind them is required. So they're not just going to investigate violent criminals now. All the people whose actions have supposedly led to those violent criminals. So that's quite vague and quite pernicious. Let's continue on. These campaigns often begin by isolating, as a quote, by isolating and dehumanizing specific targets to justify murder or other violent action against them. Okay, so he's just been saying he needs to investigate all participants, all people who are associated in any way, shape or form. It could be anyone, really, that's involved in the conspiracy or the structure. Could be a funder, could be someone who just said something. That's how you turn First Amendment protected activity into supporting terrorism. But they're now saying it justifies murder. They're talking about being an accessory to murder now for the same vague stuff. What I'm doing right now is criticizing Trump's attack on the rule of law. This memo could be seen as me justifying the murder. If the wrong person is a pepper, if we have a crazy pepper and they go and shoot someone, they go, well, look, he rolled him up. He's part of the problem. Quote, there are common recurrent motivations and indicia uniting this pattern of violent and terroristic activities under the umbrella of self-described anti-fascism. These movements portray foundational American principles, e.g. support for law enforcement and border control, as fascist, to justify and encourage acts of violent revolution. So the problem's not Antifa anymore. It's anti-fascist, which is defined as being against any foundational American principles, which according to these guys is border control. Sounds like it's against First Amendment approved activity again. According to the memo, to even call a cop a fascist could be construed as encouraging acts of violent revolution. And support for law enforcement, by the way, is not how I would describe the foundation of America. As a little aside.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of rage against the police of the day.
Yes,
just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Okay, so that's section 1. Then we've got section 2. This is broad. The memo calls for groups to investigate, prosecute, and disrupt entities and individuals engaged in acts of political violence and intimidation designed to suppress lawful political activity or obstruct the rule of law. So protests against ICE, protests against the right, they fall under that. pretty much anyone can be part of a terrorist network, according to Stephen Miller, and this memo is justification of how you get them. Then goes on to say they shall also investigate institutional and individual funders and officers and employees of organisations that are responsible for, sponsor or otherwise aid and abet the principal actors engaging in the criminal conduct described. In other words, not merely should law enforcement go after political violence of the left and its supporters, but also it goes after the people and organisations who may have done nothing illegal, but may have funded those who later did do something illegal. Maybe only supported what the administration defines as domestic terrorism. Also, they even say they shall investigate potential federal crimes relating to acts of recruiting or radicalising persons. So now, just funding someone who goes on to do something that could be seen as radicalising someone, whatever the hell that means, now you're in the gun as well. This is spreading very rapidly in this memo.
There's no limit.
No.
It's completely limitless.
Completely vague and limitless.
It's also terrifying to think about what they think will happen to them when they lose.
Yeah. Are they aware that they're fighting against free speech here? Well, let's look at this next bit. This will give us a clue. Common threads animating this violent conduct include anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, anti-Christianity, support for the overthrow of the United States government, extremism on migration, race and gender, hostility towards those who hold traditional American views on family, religion and morality. So now they're explicitly tying this supposed radicalization to being left-wing. This is what they need to investigate. People have no choice in the government but to investigate, according to this new memo.
I love it. Similar to when Trump was saying 97% of news was negative, and I was asking what's the right percentage? Like, what is the model left-wing party for this administration? What does that look like?
Cuomo.
Or Eric Adams.
Yeah. The Attorney General shall issue specific guidance that ensures domestic terrorism priorities include politically motivated terrorist acts such as organised doxing campaigns, swatting, rioting, looting, trespass, assault, destruction of property, threats of violence, and civil disorder. That could be anything. It could be protests. This guidance shall also include an identification of any behaviours, fact patterns, recurrent motivations, or other indicia common to organisations and entities that coordinate these acts in order to direct efforts to identify and prevent potential violent activity. Okay, so we're going from doxing and violent threats, fair enough, to trespass and civil disorder all of a sudden. So now speech they don't like is threats of violence, and conduct they don't like becomes terrorism. The Treasury Secretary shall provide guidance for financial institutions to file suspicious activity reports and investigate indicia of illicit funding streams to ensure such activity is rooted out at the source and referred for law enforcement action as appropriate. So if you donate to a left-wing organisation with a credit card, bang, they got you. The Commission of the Internal Revenue Service shall take action to ensure that no tax-exempt entities are directly or indirectly financing political violence or domestic terrorism. So they're bleeding non-profits dry there with that paragraph. All federal law enforcement agencies with investigative authority shall question and interrogate within all lawful authorities individuals engaged in political violence or lawlessness regarding the entity or individual organising such actions and any related financial sponsorship of those actions. So once again, they're anyone funding, and they're talking interrogation there as well. I just skipped past that. That sounds ominous. That's section 2. Then we've got section 3. One more element which is concerning. In section 3, it states that the Attorney General may recommend that any group or entity whose members are engaged in activities meeting the definition of domestic terrorism merits designation as a domestic terrorist organisation. Now, normally that means nothing.
Yeah.
But one place that does mean something, Jared, is under the Patriot Act. Under the Patriot Act, the FBI can perform warrantless surveillance on Americans with no judicial involvement through the use of national security letters if it relates to counter-terrorism.
Funny how much they're using that designation these days.
It is, isn't it? So, when by labelling a group a domestic terror organisation for any vague reason, or a person a domestic terrorist for any vague reason, it allows the full force of the Patriot Act to be released on that person in secret without a judge. And then they can use that information.
FISA court. Right? Am I making that up? Doesn't the FISA court have some jurisdiction over tapping?
I don't think it has any. I don't think it stops you tapping domestic terrorists.
I thought it was any U.S. citizen. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But anyways, I thought that was the point of the FISA court, was to have not complete carte blanche on Americans, but maybe not.
Maybe. I'll look into that. It's a good point. Like whether it applies to. I mean, it definitely applies to some. Whether it applies to these guys or not. All right. Then, once they got the information, and by the way, the FISA court's a rubber stamp, but let's leave that aside. Once they got that information.
You said no judge. I think there is a judge. They rubber stamp it very nicely.
Yes. Once they got that information that they gather from these powers and from the rest of the memo, what they can do then is lay RICO charges on their enemies. Like one of their legal guys, Mike Davis, said to Rolling Stone, we need to use our anti-terrorism laws, our RICO statutes, our conspiracy statutes. We need to use every tool in our law enforcement arsenal to crush the left-wing terrorists legally, financially, and politically, and to cut off their funding sources and throw them in prison. Now, look, this memo might do nothing. It could be completely innocent. A lot of what I just read out was vague as. It could be useless. But in the hands of Stephen Miller,
thank you,
it is so incredibly broad, it could be used for all kinds of mischief. And honestly, I'm all out of trust for these guys. I'm especially out of trust for Stephen Miller. If you think I'm being unreasonable, recall this is how Stephen Miller refers to the Democratic Party.
The Democrat Party does not fight for, care about, or represent American citizens. It is an entity devoted exclusively to the defense of hardened criminals, gangbangers, and illegal alien killers and terrorists. The Democrat Party is not a political party. It is a domestic extremist organization.
That sounds like something that's straight out of that memo, the Democratic Party.
He's deliberate with his words.
Yeah. And let's see what Trump... by the way, all these legal stuff from the administration, they're coming straight from Stephen Miller. So, that's not an accident. This is not an accident. This is his intention.
Yep.
And this is what Trump says he wants to do to George Soros.
We're going to look into Soros because I think it's a RICO case against him and other people. Because this is more than like protests. This is real agitation. This is riots on the street. And we're going to look into that.
Now, you might think that's just Trump talking shit. He does that. But where it's very precise shit to start talking about RICO statutes. Where do you think he got that from? Do you think it just randomly just popped in his head? Or do you think Steve Miller's been in his ear for the last month talking about RICO statutes, and now he's got the law to do it? Well, the memo to do it. Even before this memo went out, law enforcement was moving in this direction anyway. This is from the Orlando Sentinel. I'm going to put it in the homework if you want to look. 2 armed men wearing bulletproof vests with the word police stenciled on them showed up Wednesday at the Largo home of Kathy O'Gara while she was getting her 11-year-old granddaughter ready for school. Dogs were barking. There was a loud knock at the door. She greeted the men who didn't identify themselves or the agency they were with. They asked if her husband, James O'Gara, lived there and if they could speak to him about a postcard he'd sent to Florida CFO Blasey Ingoglia with the brief message, "You lack values." It was a scary big red flag moment for the O'Garas. That's in the quote, big red flag moment. A retired couple who are politically active supporters of progressive candidates, vocal critics of President Trump's immigration policies, and helped to organize a local No Kings anti-Trump demonstration in June. Anything is possible if you can send a postcard and have this happen, Kathy O'Gara said. That's even before this memo.
Yeah, not great.
According to the New York Times, a U.S. Attorney's Office were instructed to investigate George Soros' network. That came out this week.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly if they have provided material support to terror groups, inverted commas, terror groups. Federal prosecutors were instructed to look into bringing charges of racketeering. That's RICO. Arson, wire fraud, and material support for terrorism against Soros's Open Society foundations. One White House official told Reuters openly, the goal is to destabilize Soros's network. The group said, the Open Society Foundation said, the Open Society Foundations unequivocally condemn terrorism and do not fund terrorism. Our activities are peaceful and lawful, and our grantees are expected to abide by human rights principles and comply with the law. None of that matters, mate, once you got that memo. To be clear, some investigations are fine, Jared. there's a legitimate terrorist attack a few weeks back where ICE agents were lured out of a detention center. And on July 4, with fireworks, they were ambushed, shot by 10 shooters lying in wait.
Yeah.
20 or 30 rounds of shots. That's a serious crime.
Yeah.
And 2 people were just indicted for providing material support for terrorism. I'm okay with that. That is terrorism.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. Okay? If you help out terrorism, you go to jail. That's fine. All right? I don't know what these people did in particular. Maybe they're dodgy charges. But assuming they actually did help them out, fine. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is in the Wall Street Journal this week, the Trump administration has been preparing sweeping changes to the IRS, which would allow the agency to pursue criminal inquiries of left-leaning groups more easily. MAGA allies would be installed at the IRS Criminal Investigative Division, where they would exert firmer control over the unit and weaken the involvement of IRS lawyers in criminal investigations. I love it when you weaken the involvement of lawyers. And a senior IRS official involved in the effort has drawn up a list of potential targets that includes, wait for it, George Soros. Who would have thought?
Which is exactly what the Tea Party Republicans accused the Obama-era IRS of doing, of targeting conservative nonprofits.
And to be clear, they targeted a bunch of activist groups. Some were left-wing and some were right-wing. In the end, there was slightly more that were right-wing than left-wing, and that was a massive controversy. In this case, they're appointing someone on purpose to shut the lawyers up so they can focus on George Soros. They're saying that openly. Oh my God. Scott Bessent is talking about this like they're going after Al-Qaeda.
We have started to compile lists, put together networks, and there's a long record here. And we don't know how much of the support's coming in from overseas. We don't know how much being supported by U.S. nonprofits, C3s that give money to C4s. But this is mission critical for us now, just as after 9/11 and Osama bin Laden, the ultimate culprit, was captured. We are operationalizing this here at Treasury, and we are going to track down who is responsible for this.
They're talking about who is funding free speech. That's what they're talking about.
And who did Scott Bessent work for famously?
Who does what, sir?
Who did Scott Bessent used to work for?
He used to work for George Soros. I'm glad you brought that up. By the way, while we're bringing up connections from history, Nixon was impeached for exactly this kind of abuse of the IRS. Okay. And final thought is, I'm not going to go through all the clips. We're way over time. This week we saw the vilification of critiques spreading to the No Kings rally, where one after another, people from the administration were going on about the No Kings rally being a hate America rally, that they're all Marxists and communists and revolutionaries, and depending on how Lockie goes, he can play some clips or he can't play some clips. Believe me, they exist, all right? Ted Cruz wasn't even waiting for the protest to be on before he declared it was probably going to be a riot and they should investigate the protests for violating RICO laws. Let me just say, there's one more reason why it's such a triumph that these guys in the end felt like they had nothing. And I'm so glad the No Kings protest gave them absolutely nothing, because they are trying to end dissent and protest. And the less we can give them while keeping protest going, the better it is. Honestly, Jared, I'm so worried about the direction that this is year one still. Stephen Miller is a concern. He really is.
Yeah, and we saw, remember, with Signalgate, when he stepped in and made comments, that's when all discussion ended. And they know there's no one that comes out against him in the media, in the way that you see all sorts of hypothesis and sort of backstabbing of all the other cabinet members. It's him and almost him alone that broaches no criticism from anyone. He runs exactly how he wants to run it. One more thing I will add, though. I know, I'm so sorry we're over time. We can cut this out. But there's this saying, that if the normies couldn't do immigration properly, then you shouldn't be surprised that they get this.
Yeah.
And in New York City, we're talking about mayoral race. If normies can't get affordability in line, they should be unsurprised to get a socialist, right? So the question then is, again, my pragmatic, solutions-oriented mentality is we're seeing this, and what can we learn from it, right? Let's not forget that Jan 6, 2021 was based on a legal argument. And in many ways, we closed that legal argument thanks to some reforms that were passed during the Biden administration. And that legal argument was ultimately what the question was, what is the role of the vice president in counting the electoral college ballots? We closed it. It passed. Bipartisan legislation passed during the Biden administration. But what can we do about this? What is the legislation that we can pass? And obviously there are societal ills that are broader, but putting my think tank hat on is, how can we not come back to this?
It's a great question. I mean, it starts with having a Supreme Court that's going to stop this, because a lot of these things are so clearly against the First Amendment. Like a Supreme Court that really cares about the First Amendment would just strike so much of this down. Other than that, I don't know. It's very, very hard to legislate against bad faith in government. And this is very bad faith.
But ultimately, the U.S. is a nation of laws, not heritage or norms. Right? Every democracy has some norms, and you have to allow for that. Yeah. But the U.S. is famously founded on being a nation of laws and not of history or heritage, right? So, yeah, it's a challenge to think about what is a policy solution for this that could one day be palatable. What does that future Jerry Ford do? That you saw all sorts of reforms after the Nixon administration that we still see to this day, whether it be the reforms to the CIA, reforms to the FBI. What are the reforms that we should be thinking about? It's really easy to just throw rocks at this and say this is terrible and point as saying this is reprehensible, but what do we want to do about it is my question.
No, that's a really good question. And that's a really good thought to raise. And I'll throw in one more on top of that. What law do you come up with that protects funding of free speech that doesn't undermine efforts to try to control political funding, like political spending?
Yeah.
Because they're at loggerheads with each other. And the more you protect funding, the more you protect unlimited political spending.
Yeah.
Which is its own problem.
Yeah.
So these are good questions.
And let's not forget that if it weren't for the very open primary process of the Republican Party, Donald Trump would not have been the Republican nominee in 2024. He was not as well funded as many of his opponents were. The institutions of the Republican Party did not want him to win in 2024, the GOP nomination. They wanted Haley, DeSantis, anyone, but he was popular with the grassroots. So it wasn't even a funding thing, in my view at least. I don't think it was as much of a funding thing that brought him over the line.
If it was a closed process, he's not winning in 2016 either.
Exactly.
But that's not the law. That's the party system.
Yeah, but it's the party's rules and regulations, right? So in many ways, the openness has hurt with the institutional approach or the institutionalists.
Plenty for us to ponder on as we reflect on how much Lockie had to edit this episode. And by the way, for those who are asking about last week's PEP, how at the end there was all kinds of dodgy edits, it was because in the Chaz Unleashed bit, one of the cards was corrupted, so Lockie couldn't cut.
Let's tell the full story, which is I was tired and failed, and I ejected the card before turning the camera off.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
No.
That's terrible.
It is bad. It's just bad form.
It's okay. Anyway, so we only had one camera to cut with, so that's why it looks so crappy cutting.
Sorry, Peppers.
But they're going to be real smooth cuts. Smooth and thousands of cuts in this episode. Thanks, Locke. Thank you, Jared.
Pleasure as always.
We'll see you guys in about 3 days' time. Till then, stay peppy.